Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto's decision on leaving Konoha and going to DC Universe Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for Part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. There was a sort of hush in the Hokage residence, the kind that usually meant one of three things. 1. Someone had broken a family heirloom. 2. Boruto was about to get scolded. Or 3. Naruto Uzumaki had made yet another life-altering decision without properly warning anyone first. It was, of course, the third. Naruto, 7th Hokage, world savior, full-time paperwork magnate, sat at the head of the long, slightly scratched dining table that had somehow survived 2 generations of chaotic children and one particularly enthusiastic ramen night. He had that look on his face again. The "I've just decided something enormous and everyone's going to hate it but I am doing it anyway" look. A very specific breed of Uzumaki stubbornness that not even shadow clones could talk him out of. "I've thought this through for a long time," he began solemnly, fingers steepled like a monk contemplating enlightenment, or perhaps just trying to hide the ink stains on his sleeves. "And the only solution to our problem is to leave this land." A pause. A breath. A dropped fork. "What?" yelled Boruto, leaping to his feet so fast his chair went clattering backwards with all the grace of a startled deer. "Are you serious? You want us to just leave Konoha? Like forever?" 2 to 3 years, not forever, Naruto corrected calmly, as if they were discussing a mild vacation to the sand village and not abandoning their entire way of life. "We need peace. And in this world, that's becoming impossible." Himawari squealed in delight, clapping her hands like she'd just been told they were going on a roller coaster. "Yay! Can I bring my brush pens? And my cactus? Oh, and the big cat plushie. Not the small one, the one with the—" "Yes, sweetheart," Naruto said, already slightly overwhelmed. Kawaki, who had the emotional expressiveness of a stone on most days, merely nodded. This wasn't surprising. He'd faced far worse than interdimensional travel, and if Naruto said they were going, then they were going. Loyalty looked different on Kawaki. It didn't shout or cry, it simply existed like gravity, silent, certain. Hinata, however, placed a gentle hand on her husband's arm. Her eyes, soft and lavender as ever, were clouded with concern. "Are you sure, dear?" she asked quietly. "You've been so tired lately. Maybe this is just stress talking?" "It's not just that," Naruto replied, more gently this time. "I've discovered another world. A place we can live without being hunted, hailed, or hounded every 10 seconds. Where I won't be dragged back into duty every time someone breaks a teacup or misfiles a report." "Still sounds like you're running away," Boruto muttered. His arms were folded tightly across his chest, the classic pose of a teenager trying very hard not to feel anything. Naruto turned to him, his voice losing the Hokage weight and becoming just a dad's voice. "You told me to spend more time with the family. Well, here it is. A proper chance. Sacrifices have to be made, Boruto. We can't have everything. But I promise, we'll come back. Stronger, happier, whole." "Not going," Boruto mumbled again. "You are," Naruto said firmly. "My word is final. Get ready. We're leaving in an hour." And just like that, the meeting was over. Boruto huffed off with his usual dramatic flair, a solid 7 out of 10. Himawari skipped away to begin packing, with 3 plushies now, and Kawaki stood in the doorway silently, watching them all with unreadable eyes. Hinata, ever composed, started making sandwiches. Because no matter how many universes one planned to travel through, a mother knew, no journey began without a full lunchbox. Naruto Uzumaki was not the kind of man who knew how to quit. He had once headbutted a god, befriended demons, and reformed mass murderers through the sheer power of talk no jutsu. But retirement? Personal boundaries? Saying no to work? Those things, clearly, were harder than beating Madara. So it came as a mild shock to everyone, especially the other Kage, and very especially to Sasuke, that Naruto, hero of the Fourth Great War, master of the Shadow Clone Paperwork Empire, and arguably the most stubborn man alive, decided to leave. Just like that. Poof. Gone. But to understand why, you had to rewind a bit. Back to the beginning. Back to the part where things had gone slightly off the rails. For a while, things had been peaceful. The kind of peace that tasted like burnt miso ramen and smelled vaguely of ink and council meetings. Naruto, having defeated Kaguya, was hailed as a global hero. Parades were held, statues were sculpted, some quite unflattering, and every child with spiky hair declared they wanted to grow up to be like him. Except Boruto, of course. But peace, as Naruto would often mutter while elbow deep in mission scrolls, was boring. Or at least temporary. It started small. A few books on advanced chakra theory. Long conversations with specialists. Then, visits to ancient ruins. Training under barrier masters. Sparring with monks. Memorizing the entire Shinobi Historical Compendium Volume I to Ziv. And then Tonari happened. Floating eyes. Moon castles. Prophecies. The usual. That was when Naruto decided to go from a bit serious to one missed meal away from becoming a chakra-powered cryptid. His days blurred into training, learning, researching. His nights were filled with surveillance missions, seal refining, and battling cosmic parasites in secret. He even studied under Kabuto for medical ninjutsu, though he insisted on meeting at a neutral location far, far away from any creepy orphan basements. And because he was Naruto, he did all this on top of being Hokage. Shadow clones were everywhere. In meetings. At the hospital. Buying groceries. Teaching academy students. Writing apology letters to Hinata. He was the Hokage of 1,000 faces, literally, and it nearly killed him. Multiple times. Overworked? Definitely. Obsessed? Undeniably. But he couldn't stop. Not when people were dying. Not when the world still wasn't safe. Not when the next Otsutsuki could drop from the sky like a glorified alien pineapple at any moment. Could anyone blame him for trying? Unfortunately, yes. Mostly his family. Boruto had stopped speaking to him outside of passive-aggressive grunts. Himawari would sometimes ask if the clone at dinner was real dad or discount dad. And Kawaki, stoic, dangerous Kawaki, said nothing, but his silence spoke volumes. Naruto knew he was failing them. He had promised Hinata the kind of love that changed destinies. Promised Boruto a future brighter than his own. Promised to be the dad he never had. But the Otsutsuki never cared about promises. Then came Momoshiki. The fight was brutal. Unrelenting. Naruto barely won, and he didn't walk away unscathed. For the first time in years, he truly believed he would die. That night, for the first time in longer than he could remember, Naruto went home. Not a clone. Him. He tucked Himawari into bed. Ate dinner without a briefing scroll in hand. Watched the stars beside Hinata and didn't once think about dimensional rifts. For a while, he tried to stay. But the peace didn't last. It never did. And then Ishiki came. The battle was apocalyptic. Streets were leveled. Skies split. Naruto fought like a man who had nothing left to lose, and for a moment, he almost didn't make it. But in the end, the Otsutsuki was gone. Dead. Defeated. It should have been the end. It wasn't. Naruto knew better than to think threats disappeared just because you couldn't see them. And he couldn't leave his family behind to deal with what came next. He had visited other dimensions before, accidentally at first, thanks to a rogue portal and one very cranky sage toad. But now he had mapped them, charted them, tracked the flow of life chakra between worlds. And one of those worlds had people. Strange people. Powerful people. Heroes. They wore capes. Flew through the skies. Stopped meteors with their faces. But most importantly, they had no idea what a Rasengan was. Which meant no one knew who Naruto Uzumaki was. It was perfect. The day the Uzumaki family left the world behind, there was no parade, no fanfare, and certainly no press release. Naruto had insisted. Last thing I need is a dramatic goodbye where someone cries and I end up staying because I feel guilty, he'd said, stuffing emergency ramen packs into a scroll as Himawari tried to cram in all 3 of her cactus plants. They have names, Papa. And so, under the soft blush of dawn, the Hokage and his family slipped out of Konoha like quiet shadows. If shadows wore bright orange cloaks, carried dimension-traveling scrolls, and argued over who got to hold the toothbrush case. But of course, a few people had shown up. Because of course they did. Konohamaru, wearing his monkey sage robes, which were slightly too big and definitely dramatic, stood tall, or as tall as someone can look while blinking back tears and trying not to trip on a summoning scroll. I won't let you down, boss, he said, saluting so fiercely he whacked himself in the forehead. You've trained me for this moment. I'll protect the village, sign the documents, and probably accidentally destroy the filing system at least twice. But I'll learn. Naruto chuckled and clapped a hand on his shoulder. You're ready, Konohamaru. And remember, absolutely no exploding clones in the office this time. Once, Konohamaru protested. That happened once, and it was a very confused Tuesday. Sasuke stood nearby, arms crossed, face schooled into his usual mix of brooding contemplation and I tolerate you fondness. He hadn't said much that morning, but when Naruto approached, he gave a small nod and muttered, "If I see your face here before 3 years are up, I'll assume it's a clone." And exploded. "I'll miss you too, team," Naruto grinned. Sakura, rolling her eyes and wiping away a tear with equal subtlety, added, "Seriously, Naruto. If you come back early, I will punch you. And I will break something important." "Such loving friends," Hinata whispered softly beside him, holding his hand with a small smile. Tsunade snorted and downed a sake bottle from the early morning stash she absolutely didn't hide in her robes. "Take your break, brat," she said, ruffling his hair like the oversized grandmother she was. "You've earned it 10 times over. And if you even think about sending a report, I'll come over there and chain you to a hammock." Shikamaru yawned and waved lazily. "Troublesome as ever, Naruto. But thank you for everything. Don't worry about the mess. We'll keep things running, and not let the village burn down." "That's so comforting, Shikamaru," Naruto deadpanned. "Just being realistic." Gaara, quiet and composed as always, approached last. His hand clasped Naruto's in a rare show of warmth. "You're allowed to be happy," he said softly. "You've carried the weight long enough. Now let it go. Just for a little while." Naruto's smile faltered just a little, because Gaara always knew the exact words that cut straight to the soul, but he nodded, heart full. "I'll come back," he said, voice low. "But not before 3 years. Deal?" "Deal," Iruka said, suddenly hugging him from behind like it was the academy graduation all over again. "And if you break it, Naruto?" I know, you'll explode the clone." The group burst out laughing. As the swirling golden portal opened and the wind picked up, Naruto turned to face them one last time. "Take care of our world," he said. "And don't forget me." "We won't," Sakura promised. "Not a chance," Konohamaru said, already scribbling Hokage's vacation, day 1 in a notebook titled The Great Monkey Chronicle. "See you in 3 years," Sasuke muttered. "Unless the world ends." "Even then," Naruto said with a grin, "just wait 3 years." And with that, the Uzumaki family stepped into the light, into a new world, a new chapter. The portal closed behind them with a soft hum. For the first time in decades, the Hokage's office was silent. It was a strange thing, traveling between worlds. No flashing lights. No kaboom. Not even a puff of smoke. Just a soft whoosh, like a page turning in a very large, very ancient book, and then the Uzumaki family stepped into silence. They stood at the edge of what could only be described as a forgotten town. Wooden buildings leaned like tired old men. Rusted signs creaked in the wind. A general store with the E missing from its sign looked like it hadn't sold anything since the invention of socks. In short, it was delightfully miserable. "This place smells like history class and regret," Boruto muttered, arms crossed, face scrunched like he just walked into a ramen shop that only served salad. "Gee, I wonder if this place even has internet or humans, for that matter." "Don't worry," Kawaki said, not even looking up from the broken window he was inspecting. "There's no internet strong enough to make you smarter anyway." "Why you bootlicker?" "Whiny brat." "Stop," Naruto muttered, in a tone so casual that it might have been mistaken for boredom, if not for the bone-crushing weight of his chakra that immediately hit the two boys like an invisible mountain. Boruto froze mid-snarl. Kawaki's smirk twitched, then locked in place like a badly paused video. They weren't in pain. Just unable to move. At all. Not even a wiggle. Naruto said mildly. "That's better." From behind him, a giggle slipped out like a songbird escaping its cage. Himawari, bright-eyed and 11, looked utterly enchanted. Her shoes crunched on the dusty gravel as she twirled in place, eyes wide and sparkling as they took in every inch of the ghost town. "This is so cool. It's exactly how I imagined adventuring would be. Ruins. Dust. Dramatic arguing." Her voice echoed off cracked walls and old porch railings. "Are we staying here or moving out?" Hinata asked, scanning the horizon with her Byakugan active. Her gaze drifted across crumbling buildings and long-abandoned roads, not a soul in sight for at least 20 miles. There's nothing alive nearby. Not even birds. Naruto nodded. Exactly why I chose it. We'll make this our starting base. Scout out the region. Blend in slowly. He took a deep breath and turned serious. This world, it's different. It's brimming with strong energy, beings who don't use chakra but have powers of their own. I've felt at least 5 city-level energy signatures without even trying. So starting now, everyone here is going to act like real shinobi. Boruto blinked. Wait, you mean like actual missions? Danger? People who fight back? Hard missions only, Naruto said with a grin. No more kitten rescues. For the first time in days, Boruto forgot he was sulking. His eyes lit up, and his arms uncrossed. Finally, he thought. No more being protected, no more always being the Hokage's kid. Just me, on the field, doing real stuff. Kawaki, still frozen in place, hummed nonchalantly. He didn't care much what Naruto planned. As long as they were together, he was fine. Besides, danger was practically his bedtime story. Naruto released the pressure, and the boys finally moved again, both pretending they hadn't just been spiritually flattened by one word from their dad. If Naruto Uzumaki could have locked his children in a safe, happy little cottage with zero risk of ever encountering a psychotic alien overlord, he would have done it in a heartbeat. But unfortunately, his children were his children. And Uzumaki's didn't exactly have a history of staying out of trouble. Adventure, it ran in their chakra like a second bloodstream. Even now, in this forgotten corner of a foreign world, Naruto could sense it in their eyes, the quiet longing to live a story worth telling. To experience what he had experienced, see what he had seen, and fight monsters that didn't look like oversized raccoons with attitude problems. They wanted more than lazy bandits and wannabe shinobi. They wanted a challenge. So, like any responsible parent with a flair for overkill, Naruto decided to set up a secret surveillance network and pretend to let them explore. After all, nothing said trust and freedom quite like shadow clones tailing your every footstep. The town was beginning to feel like home now, or at least like a charming post-apocalyptic summer camp. Himawari had claimed the town's abandoned bakery, declaring it Uzumaki Base Alpha and already decorating it with handmade explosive seals disguised as cupcake stickers. Kawaki had taken up residence in the garage behind what used to be the sheriff's office. It suited him, quiet, shadowed, and conveniently close to tools he could modify into weapons if necessary. Boruto, of course, had rejected every house with a scoff. Too small. Too dusty. Too many spiders. Can we choose the house already? Boruto groaned for the 4th time, dragging his feet like they were made of stone. We've been walking in circles for half an hour. They had, in fact, only walked down 2 streets, but Naruto let it slide. They just reached the center of the town, where an old stone statue stood half buried in weeds. It looked like a weathered mayor or perhaps a very enthusiastic dentist. Time had taken its toll, one arm had fallen off, the face was chipped, and someone had scrawled "Jim sucks" on the back in what looked suspiciously like raccoon paw prints. Naruto stopped in front of it and placed a palm against the base. From now on, he said calmly, I'll be teaching you many things. So watch carefully and learn. Boruto blinked. Wait, what? The statue rumbled. Dust spiraled upward as the old stone melted into shape, twisting and reforming until a tall pillar of polished blackened stone stood in its place. Runes etched in glowing red spirals flickered to life along its surface, Uzumaki sealing marks, elegant and complicated, slowly unfolding like blooming flowers. Boruto's mouth actually fell open. He'd always thought of Fuinjutsu as one of those weird niche topics, like mushroom farming or tax law. But watching it happen in real time was kind of awesome. Old man probably doesn't even know how to hold a sword, he thought absently. But this could be useful. Despite his earlier whining, a grin tugged at the corner of his mouth. To the side, Kawaki was already analyzing the seals, his eyes narrowing slightly. He didn't say much, but Naruto knew he was watching, quietly absorbing every detail. Himawari was bouncing on her heels, practically glowing with excitement. Oh, Dad, did you use a double-layered visual suppression seal with the nested alarm loop or the perimeter illusion with shadow inversion? Naruto blinked at her. You've been reading my scrolls again, haven't you? Maybe. Hinata, ever the supportive wife and Loki jutsu genius, simply leaned against a lamppost and smiled as if this was the most romantic thing Naruto had done all week. This, Naruto said, gesturing to the pillar as more seals bloomed across its surface, is our first line of defense. A barrier seal with 3 effects, optical illusion for those outside, chakra masking for those inside, and a ping alert if anyone stumbles into the perimeter. Only basic level? Kawaki asked quietly. Yeah. We don't want to draw attention yet. Complex seals have complex footprints. This is subtle. Functional. Invisible. Like Mu, Boruto muttered, suddenly remembering the silent assassin they'd studied. Naruto nodded, pleased. Exactly. The best ninja aren't loud. They don't blow things up to make a point. Himawari raised her hand. But we can blow things up if it's for a point, right? Yes, Naruto sighed. If absolutely necessary. If there was one thing Boruto Uzumaki was absolutely, positively certain of in life, it was that his father was not a sword guy. The man had fists like meteors, hair that defied gravity, and a track record of punching interdimensional aliens in the face. But swords? Too elegant. Too pointy. Too clean. So when Naruto announced that he would personally teach his children, specifically Fuinjutsu, Boruto's first instinct was to scoff. And yet the words hit him like a hidden shuriken to the chest. From now on, I'll be teaching you many things. So watch carefully and learn. The wind shifted around the town square. Dust swirled. The air changed, and for once Boruto shut up. You see, as Uzumaki's, Boruto, Himawari, and even Kawaki, by bond, if not by blood, had one glaring problem in common. They were terrible at sealing techniques. Not bad. Not average. Terrible. Their family tree practically bloomed with legends of chakra chains, unbreakable barriers, and time-space scrolls so complex they made ordinary shinobi weep. The Uzumakis were meant to be terrifying Fuinjutsu masters with traps woven into the air and spells sealed into their hair clips. And yet here they were, 3 bright children who couldn't even anchor a basic 5-point seal without the parchment catching fire or the ink exploding. Naruto couldn't blame them. He had been the same. He'd spent his childhood being told he was too loud, too wild, too hopeless. His heritage had been buried with the fall of Uzushio, and by the time he learned what Fuinjutsu even was, he was already fighting gods and dodging death on a weekly basis. It wasn't until much later, long after pain and war and reconciliation, that he'd claimed his legacy as an Uzumaki. Now, finally, he had a chance to pass that legacy on. Boruto stared at the glowing pillar of seals still humming gently in the center of the town. His father stood beside it with the quiet confidence of someone who had learned not from books, but through years of bruised fingers, burnt eyebrows, and seals gone very wrong. He didn't look like the man who had once been too busy to come home, but he looked like a teacher. Boruto swallowed the lump in his throat. He had never admitted it aloud, but his childhood had been a blur of silent admiration and aching disappointment. Naruto Uzumaki, the father who belonged to everyone, but rarely to him. He'd learned Rasengan from Konohamaru, basic jutsu from Hinata, advanced chakra control from textbooks. Even Sasuke, his reluctant second father figure, had been the one to help him find his style, though Boruto had stubbornly rejected Hinata's gentle Hyuga techniques and failed to properly honor her legacy. Now, he finally knew. He wanted to be a sword user. Not because it was flashy. Not because Sasuke was. But because something about it clicked. The balance. The discipline. The sharp edge between control and chaos. He wasn't sure what his father could teach him in that department, but sealing was something else. Seals could change the world. Naruto Uzumaki, former Hokage, living legend, and occasional demolition hazard, had never considered himself much of an architect. But well, when one could control wood, earth, water, fire, and metaphysical sealing arts that bent reality on a good day, designing a house wasn't exactly rocket science. So after finishing his protective seal, a sprawling sensory net stitched into the very bones of the town, Naruto stood tall, cracked his knuckles, and slammed his palm to the ground with the easy grace of someone conjuring miracles between breakfast and dinner. A warm wave of chakra pulsed into the earth like sunlight spilling through deep soil. And the ground responded. Grass sprouted first, dancing like green lightning in fast forward. Then came thick oak-like trees, their trunks coiling and stretching to the sky like they'd been waiting for centuries to return. On one side of the town square, a small vegetable garden burst into being, complete with tomatoes, carrots, and something suspiciously close to ramen herbs. Himawari clapped her hands in delight. Kawaki blinked slowly, as if still trying to decide whether this counted as farming or some kind of jutsu-level cheating. Boruto opened his mouth to say something sarcastic about how the plants probably had better combat stats than most rogue shinobi. Then thought better of it. Choose a house, Naruto said, turning toward them with a proud grin. Or would you rather I build a new one? Hinata had already explored most of the town earlier. Her Byakugan had swept every abandoned house from attic to crawlspace. I believe a new one is needed, she said politely but firmly. None of these are suitable. Translation: she didn't want to sleep in someone else's creepy attic, even if they were probably dead and had left behind a perfectly good armchair. Naruto nodded in agreement. Right. We'll build one that suits us. A training room, weapon storage, reinforced foundations, meditation garden, and a library full of sealing scrolls weren't exactly standard fare in American frontier ghost towns. Father, Himawari called suddenly, her voice bright and certain, can we have our house there? She pointed to the old patrol station at the edge of the plaza, its roof slightly caved in and its front porch half swallowed by creeping ivy. Naruto followed her finger, and his smile grew even wider. As you wish. With a deep breath, Naruto walked to the center of the chosen spot. He closed his eyes, reaching inward, concentrating. He didn't just imagine a house, he willed it. The shape, the rooms, the feel of warm wood under bare footsteps. The echo of laughter in the hallway. The weight of family. Of love. Then, with a soft pulse of chakra, he released it all. The patrol station sank into the ground as if politely excusing itself. In its place, a house began to grow. Not like construction. Not like a building being made. But like life. Wood burst from the earth like liquid architecture, rising and twisting, shaping itself into sturdy walls and curved eaves. Windows opened like eyes. A wide porch curled around the front. The scent of fresh cedar filled the air. This was not just any wood. This was Uzumaki wood, grown from his peak strength wood release, the kind of material that could outlast earthquakes, wars, and quite possibly the end of the planet. In front bloomed a small flower garden, carefully spaced with calming violet blooms and brilliant red petals. 2 elegant trees offered shade. At the entrance, nestled like silent guardians, stood 2 carved statues, one of a sleeping lion, and the other a curled nine-tailed fox. Boruto stared at the house in stunned silence. Okay. That was cool. Alright, kids, Naruto clapped his hands. Let's get inside, unpack, and after that, small walk around the area. Recon mission. Civilian clothes. No kunai in the open, Boruto. I only brought, like 4, Boruto muttered. I will choose my room first. Himawari yelled, already bolting for the porch. No, I will. Boruto raced after her, nearly tripping on the garden fence. I don't care. Kawaki called after them, arms crossed, refusing to move. Typical. Naruto chuckled and turned to the silent boy. You're not going? Father, Kawaki said quietly, I don't mind such things. Let them pick. I'll take whatever is left. You're really mature, Naruto said, ruffling his hair fondly. Look after your siblings, all right? Kawaki's chest tightened slightly. He nodded. I will protect them. Naruto paused, just a moment, and then placed a hand on Kawaki's shoulder. I know you will. It was, perhaps, the strangest sight the ghost town had ever seen, a legendary war hero and 3 highly trained shinobi trying to blend in by wearing jeans and sneakers. In the living room, now decorated with a mix of seal scroll shelves, houseplants, and a hand-painted no explosions inside sign made by Himawari, the Uzumaki children sat cross-legged on a shaggy rug while their father stood before them like a mission commander in comfy slacks. Naruto's shirt read, World's #1 Dad, believe it, a gift from Himawari that he insisted on wearing because it had sentimental value, despite Boruto's pained expression every time he saw it. We will now commence an information-gathering mission, Naruto said solemnly, hands clasped behind his back like he was giving a lecture at the academy. This means you must be cautious. Lay low. No flashy moves. No chakra spikes. And definitely no explosive traps, Hima. Himawari nodded innocently while hiding something behind her back that suspiciously sparkled. This world is filled with people who don't use chakra, but they have powers of their own. Some are dangerous. Some are confused. And some just wear their underwear outside their pants. Boruto snorted. So basically, a normal Tuesday. Since this is your first field mission in an unfamiliar dimension, Naruto continued, completely ignoring the sarcasm, I'll guide you. Follow my lead, observe, and blend in with the civilians. Hinata entered, wiping her hands on a towel, her hair pulled back in a gentle bun that somehow made her even more radiant. She looked at the group of mismatched ninja children and their relaxed yet somehow world-endingly powerful father, and her heart swelled with a kind of contentment she hadn't felt in years. Dear, she said softly, stepping up beside Naruto, I won't be joining today. There's still much to organize inside, and besides her lavender eyes sparkled. You deserve this. Time with them. Without paperwork or summoned scrolls. Naruto blinked, then gave her a lopsided smile. Thanks, Hinata. I'll bring them back safe. She reached up, fixed his collar, and whispered, or else. Boruto grimaced. Kawaki looked impressed. Himawari giggled. As the group prepared to head out, Boruto was already halfway through tying his sneakers the wrong way. You didn't mind staying back, Mom? Himawari asked, pausing at the door, fingers fidgeting. Hinata leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. It's your turn now, sweetie. Go see the world. I'll be right here, waiting with lunch. And just like that, the hesitation faded. Himawari nodded, straightened her back, and turned toward the road like she was ready to spy on the entire country. One moment, they were standing on the dirt road outside a forgotten ghost town. The next? Metropolis. Not the bustling downtown core where news helicopters soared and capes fluttered on the skyline, but a quiet patch of woodland on the outskirts. A moment between blinks, between heartbeats, and they were there. Leaves rustled gently in the morning wind, the skyscrapers' distant silhouettes, shining silver and steel in the summer haze. Good, Naruto said, glancing around and patting down the kids' hoods. Now we'll begin from here. Just follow me, and try not to look suspicious. Boruto immediately shoved his hands in his pockets, and tried to walk like someone who definitely wasn't suspicious. Kawaki just nodded, already scanning the area with an assassin's calm. Himawari waved at a squirrel. None of them noticed that one of the two Narutos standing there was a clone. The real Naruto had come with the kids, of course. The clone had stayed behind, standing quietly behind Hinata on the porch of their newly grown home. And he was quiet now, too quiet. I'm really a shitty person, the clone muttered, the words tumbling out like stones from a too heavy backpack. And my actions, I've made it really hard on you. Hinata didn't look startled. She didn't sigh, or weep, or accuse. She simply turned, and wrapped her arms around him. You've been a terrible family head, she said softly. But your duty was important. I won't lie and say it didn't hurt, but I understood. Her voice was like warm honey on a winter's day, gentle, slow, and healing. So, she continued, pulling back just enough to meet his gaze, if now you can finally rest, just stay with us, just be here, that's enough for me. Naruto didn't cry. Not quite. But something in him, something that had been curled tight for years, like a fist braced for another blow, finally loosened. I'll make it up to you, he whispered. I'll bring back joy and adventure and stupid fun. All of it. We haven't made good memories in so long. You better, Hinata teased, before rising on her toes and pressing a kiss to his lips. I'll be looking forward to it. And with that, she turned, graceful as ever, and stepped back into the house, the wooden door shutting with a soft click behind her. At first glance, Metropolis was impressive. Clean steel buildings stretched toward the sky like polished knives. Bright billboards promised the newest tech, cars zipped by without so much as a sputter, and crowds of people moved in synchronized chaos, like 1,000 ants pretending not to panic. To someone like Boruto Uzumaki, the sight of so many lights, screens, and humming machines sent a very specific thought through his brain. Thank God there's Wi-Fi. Not that he said it aloud, of course. That would have ruined the whole stoic shinobi who doesn't care about video games image he cultivated. But still, even adventurers needed downtime. Invisible to the crowd, cloaked in chakra, their presence masked so precisely that not even trained ninja would have sensed them, the Uzumaki family strolled through the outskirts of Metropolis, weaving between people like ghosts. They didn't float or flicker. They walked. Because this was a test. And Naruto Uzumaki, world savior turned family man, was still every bit the cunning mentor. No training wheels. No pre-chewed answers. Just the city, the people, and a challenge hidden in the crowd. Old man, are you sure this isn't just some picnic? Boruto drawled as they passed a hot dog vendor arguing with a robot cart. Because I don't see how this place could possibly be dangerous. Naruto didn't turn around. He didn't even blink. Things, he said, are not always what they seem. That was all. And somehow, it was enough. Metropolis felt strange. That was the word Himawari couldn't shake. Not dangerous. Not scary. Just strange. The buildings were beautiful. The people moved quickly, but not with joy. Their faces were tight. Their laughter brief. And every now and then, someone would glance up, just for a moment, like they felt something watching from the sky. Like a predator in the clouds. Himawari didn't like that part. But she liked holding her father's hand. That part was warm and steady, and made her feel like everything was going to be okay. Kawaki, meanwhile, was doing calculations in his head. The people were weak. Fragile. One blow from a mid-level shinobi could take out 20 of them. Their weapons were equally pitiful. Most carried none at all. The police wore armor that would crack under chakra-enhanced blows, and even the tough guys in suits didn't carry anything more advanced than projectile guns. We've already got jutsu launchers back home. This place is primitive. But Kawaki wasn't arrogant. He knew power could be deceptive. Naruto had taught him that the greatest threats never needed to show off. They hid, until it was too late. Naruto walked calmly, observing everything. Every scent, every vibration in the air. He didn't need to see to feel the stress running under the surface of the city like a sick river. People were exhausted. Overstimulated. Quietly furious. Their problems weren't visible, no fireballs or rogue ninja, but Naruto recognized the signs of a society on edge. It was the same expression he used to see on villagers before a rebellion, right before they snapped. Father, Himawari said softly, still clutching his hand, why not assign us a task? Naruto paused beneath a flickering streetlight. He looked at her, then at the two boys behind him. People passing by barely noticed them, even cloaked. Naruto's commanding aura drew the eye. Like a man both king and ghost. Fine, he said, his eyes narrowing with something between amusement and challenge. Go gather information. And this world's currency. Boruto blinked. How? Naruto shrugged. However you want. Kawaki raised an eyebrow. Together? No. 3 pairs of eyes locked onto his. No more questions. Then, without a word, the children disappeared, scattering in different directions. Mission accepted. Metropolis was a city of glass, noise, and unspoken tension. The kind of place where people smiled with their mouths but not their eyes, and cars honked even when standing still. Naruto Uzumaki walked invisibly through the streets like a ghost who didn't quite belong, because, quite frankly, he didn't. He wasn't alone. Trailing behind him at a respectful distance were 3 chakra cloak clones, each tailing one of his children with near paranoid dedication. A father's love, after all, wasn't measured in bedtime stories or ramen bills alone. Sometimes, it was in the exact number of invisible super ninjas shadowing your kids to keep them from being mugged or abducted by time-traveling cyborgs. You know. Just in case. As he walked, Naruto gently released tendrils of sensory chakra into the crowd, light, barely a tickle, but enough to pull the strings of memory from the people he passed. Just surface thoughts. Current impressions. Fragments of knowledge. He didn't dig deep. He didn't need to. Within an hour, he had learned the language, economic structure, political divisions, social norms. They really did frown upon walking on rooftops, and most interestingly of all, the world had superheroes. Names floated through his mind like curious jutsu scrolls. Superman, the alien with a Boy Scout's heart. Practically an immortal walking among men. Batman, a brooding nocturnal creature with the intellect of a scholar, and the paranoia of an ANBU captain who'd had too much coffee. The Flash, fast enough to outpace even Naruto's clones on a good day. Lex Luthor, business tycoon, criminal mastermind, professional sore loser, and somehow still not in prison. Naruto frowned at that one. He slipped into the Grand Library at Centennial Park, unseen, undetected, utterly casual, and began browsing, pretending to be interested in tourist architecture as his clones completed their errands. With his sensory threads snaking out, he gently copied records, digital files, and news clippings from across the network. His chakra left no trace. Even the firewalls sighed open politely under his touch. In 10 minutes, Naruto Uzumaki became a full citizen of the United States. In 15, the ownership records of the ghost town were updated, with the Uzumaki family registered as lawful proprietors. In 20, he was legally recognized as a quiet veteran who preferred rural life and had excellent tax history. Fake names are for criminals, he muttered as he tucked an ID into his coat. But even as he moved through data with ease, a thought tugged at his mind. Why hasn't Superman dealt with Lex Luthor yet? He'd read enough now to know that Luthor had his hands in everything from arms deals to metahuman experimentation. There were rumors, unproven, yes, but troubling ones, of underground labs, alien black markets, and worse. And Superman? He watched. He warned. He waited. A naive child, Naruto thought as he exited the library. Or is there more? He thought of the law, of the invisible net that bound this world together. A net made of courts, papers, due process, and loopholes. Back in his own world, Naruto had once punched immortals in the face for less. He had no patience for bureaucracy when lives were at stake. But here? Things weren't that simple. Superman could level the planet, but didn't. Was it restraint? Or fear? Or wisdom? Boruto. To the untrained eye, the young blonde boy crouched dramatically atop a skyscraper in Metropolis looked like a hero in the making. Wind tousled his hair, his cloak fluttered at just the right angle, and the setting sun painted gold over his intense, brooding expression. In reality? Boruto Uzumaki was losing his mind. Why did I not realize this sooner? Boruto groaned, bonking his forehead gently, then less gently, against the building's edge. I don't know the language. Back home, he had assumed things would work out. Because they always did. Naruto was always 10 steps ahead. Even now, the air around him translated the world. When he was nearby, Boruto understood every sign, every shout, every advertisement offering suspiciously cheap cheeseburgers. Now that Naruto was gone, it was all noise. Syllables mashed together like rice balls dropped down a flight of stairs. Should I go back and ask the old man? The thought skittered across his brain like a rebellious raccoon. But then Boruto clenched his fists, squared his jaw, and shook it off. No. That would be humiliating. There was Uzumaki pride to consider. And possibly an embarrassing lecture about preparation and discipline and studying basics before interdimensional travel. Boruto had enough trouble living in Naruto's shadow. He wasn't going to go crawling back just because he couldn't read a bus schedule. So he stood, scanning the city below with sharp, narrowing eyes. He was still invisible, thanks to Naruto's fancy sealing tech. Not full sensory erasure like the old man himself. Of course not, heaven forbid Boruto be allowed access to the good ninja tech, but good enough to keep him hidden from nosy satellites and spandex vigilantes. All right, he muttered, kneeling and rubbing his temples. I can't read the signs, I can't ask questions, and I definitely can't use Google Translate because I don't have a phone plan. But I can still kick people. A pause. Then a grin. I'll just find some bad guys. Take their stuff. Classic shinobi work. Because if Boruto couldn't understand the language of this world, he'd rely on one language that transcended all borders. The language of punching muggers in the face. He leapt off the rooftop and hit the next building silently, cloak trailing behind like a dramatic stage curtain. Down below, the city churned, people moved in tides, unaware of the boy surfing rooftops above them. He scanned alleyways, side streets, rooftops, and eventually there. A black van. Tinted windows. Parked too long in a loading zone. A man in a greasy jacket handing over something suspiciously shiny to someone in a hoodie. It didn't take a detective to know shady business when he saw it. Boruto smirked. Jackpot. As he prepared to move in, he reminded himself of the mission. Don't kill. Don't cause a scene. Don't explode anything, he whispered, ticking them off with his fingers. Just knock him out. Take the cash. Learn the currency. Bonus points if I can get a phone. Boruto activated his chakra and dropped into the alley without a sound. 2 minutes later, 5 men were unconscious. One had been gently tossed into a dumpster. The others were stuck together with chakra-infused duct tape and a single very confused alley cat. Boruto examined the loot. Some strange paper rectangles. A phone. A weird black card with a chip in it. Okay. These are probably dollars. Or coupons. I'll figure it out. He took a photo of a billboard with prices. Compared symbols. Matched the faces on the bills to public statues nearby. Ha! Take that, education system. The phone, thankfully, had Face ID disabled. The man must have been a true optimist. With some fiddling and a good old ninja override, Boruto opened the maps, browser, and messaging apps. Nice. Now this is a real mission. Himawari. If Boruto had chosen the rooftop route and the headstrong method of violence first, questions later, Himawari Uzumaki had done the opposite. She walked among the people of Metropolis with the calm grace of a princess in training or, in her case, a deadly little shinobi with perfect posture and a sunshine smile. The truth was, Hima was a masterpiece. Equal parts scout, noblewoman, and subtle infiltrator, she had been raised not only by the ever-kind Hinata, but also under the teachings of Aunt Hanabi, who wielded grace like a sword, and Sai, who smiled while lying better than any actor. Also, she had grown up right next to Inogen, which meant she'd picked up all sorts of useful tricks like how to forge a signature, fake a personality, and extract information using only wide eyes and a confused "excuse me, mister?" And also how to unflatteringly sketch her brother mid-burger bite, but that was neither here nor there. So when she separated from her brothers and went invisible, or mostly invisible, Hima didn't panic. She breathed. She adjusted the seals on her clothes to keep her heat signature from leaking, smoothed out the wrinkles in her dress, and carefully slipped among the crowd. Her footsteps were silent, her chakra low, and her mind busy. Because unlike Boruto, Himawari hadn't forgotten the language issue. She just didn't care. She didn't have time to learn English by the book, so she used a shortcut, the memory absorption jutsu. A B-rank technique, not particularly flashy, but notoriously tricky. Use it carelessly, and you might end up thinking you were an 87-year-old grandmother named Mildred who loved soup and loathed Wi-Fi. Hima was cautious. She carefully picked her targets, those with ordinary, uncomplicated lives. Office workers, street vendors, a particularly cheerful man in a hot dog costume handing out coupons. One memory at a time. Surface knowledge only. No emotional residue. And in just under an hour, Himawari Uzumaki was fluent in English, up to date on local customs, and very intrigued by a place called Disneyland. This world isn't very spiritually advanced, she thought with a small frown, but it has promise. And churros. Her destination was a nearby internet cafe, a neon-lit haven full of humming machines and questionable snacks. She needed data. Human memory was unreliable, filtered through ego and opinion. The internet, while chaotic and prone to conspiracy theories, at least gave her access to raw volume. But she didn't get far. Just as she reached the corner of the street, Himawari heard it. Screams. The whine of tires. A roar of an engine. The thunderous crunch of something metal against sidewalk. Himawari's heart skipped. An armored truck had gone rogue. It barreled down the street like a drunken rhino, flattening signs, knocking over food carts, and scattering pedestrians like startled pigeons. Back home, Hima would have launched into action immediately. No second thoughts. No hesitation. But here? We're not supposed to make a scene, she reminded herself aloud, teeth clenched. Her fist shook. Her instinct screamed, and the truck kept going. Then she breathed. Made a choice. And disappeared into a blur. From the shadows of a nearby alley, 12 hand signs flashed. Not lazy. Not fast. But perfectly executed. The chakra flowed as directed, no more, no less, dancing through her pathways like a well-trained dog. A tremor spread across the concrete. And just before the truck reached a bus stop full of terrified civilians, a massive hand made of solid earth burst from the road and snatched the vehicle like a mother catching her toddler mid-sprint. The truck groaned. Tilted. Stopped. Silence. Gasps echoed across the street. People froze in awe and confusion. No one had seen the caster. And by the time they looked around, Himawari was already gone, brushing invisible dirt from her skirt and adjusting the ribbon in her hair. Still too slow, she mumbled, frowning at her chakra circulation. I lost precision on the third sign. Mama would have done better. She made it to the internet cafe moments later, face composed, breath steady. A shinobi through and through. But inside? Her heart still thundered with joy. Her first rescue. Her first real mission. And she hadn't even broken the no-reveal rule well, mostly. Back at the alley, Naruto's clone stood in the shadows, smiling faintly. So much for laying low. But there was no irritation in his voice. Just pride. Superman. The first thing Superman noticed was the absence. No signature. No noise. No lingering trace of energy. Just a handprint in the concrete. Large. Pristine. Definitely not part of city maintenance. Clark hovered midair above the wreckage of the armored truck, cape fluttering like a crimson curtain in the soft breeze, scanning every molecule, every shoe print, every flicker of warmth or thought or intention. Nothing. Whoever had done this was either a master of concealment or something else entirely. A magician? He thought, brow furrowed. Magic users always gave him a headache, literally and metaphorically. Or maybe another alien. That was the fun part of being Superman. Every new incident came with the delightful mystery of, is it dangerous? Will it explode? Should I punch it, or offer it coffee? And this particular mystery had left behind zero answers. No cameras had caught the perpetrator. Civilians were all pointing in different directions. One old man claimed it was a ghost nun. A child said it was a tree person. Someone even swore it was Batman, which was always a safe guess when things got weird. Clark sighed. It had been just over 3 years since he started donning the suit and calling himself Superman. That meant 3 years of saving cats, rescuing satellites, and quietly figuring out how to balance his day job, his cape job, and his very human desire to actually understand people. He had learned a lot. And the most important lesson? You can't assume anything, especially when things are quiet. Because quiet didn't mean safe. It meant coiled tension. It meant someone out there knew exactly how to disappear. Lois knows something. That was always the second most important rule in Clark Kent's playbook. When in doubt, ask Lois. She knew more about strange happenings, political corruption, and long-shot alien sightings than most government agencies, and she'd definitely know if something weird had been bubbling under the surface. He turned toward the Daily Planet building, ready to follow up on the incident, when... boom. An explosion erupted several blocks away, a brilliant flower of flame and smoke blooming into the sky. Clark didn't hesitate. He was gone in a blur of red and blue. As he soared toward the smoke, a dozen questions rushed through his mind. Was this a distraction? Were the two events connected? Could it be the same person testing their powers or testing him? And most importantly, is this someone who needs help, or someone I'll need to stop? Because Superman didn't want to fight. Not if he could help it. He wanted to believe in people. Even the strange ones. Even the powerful ones. But Metropolis didn't give him that luxury every day. The mayor, the mission, and the hanging ninja. If Himawari was the quiet sunshine of the team and Boruto the thundercloud trying not to rain too hard, then Kawaki was the midnight sky, still, scarred, and far deeper than he let on. He didn't smile much. Didn't complain either. He simply moved, with purpose, with restraint, with the quiet intensity of someone who'd seen too much and felt too little. And currently, he was robbing a corporate tower. But not out of greed. Kawaki wasn't after jewelry, or cars, or one of those gaming consoles Boruto kept whispering about. No. He wanted knowledge. And maybe, just maybe, a reason to believe this world was worth protecting. Hours earlier, the mission had begun with quiet failure. Kawaki, usually so stoic, had stood on the edge of a city block, his hands clenched tightly in his jacket pockets, cursing the realization that he had absolutely no idea how to gather information. He didn't know the language, didn't know the customs, didn't even know how to Google. I've disgraced myself, he thought flatly, with the same energy one might use to comment on burnt toast. The worst part? He made the same rookie mistake as Naruto, and that alone made him want to dig a hole and hide in it. Still, Kawaki wasn't one to quit. He had spent the last few hours in a borrowed apartment, silently watching televisions through windows like some kind of antisocial owl. He listened. He observed. He memorized. Commercials, news tickers, talk shows, children's cartoons with suspiciously violent undertones. And slowly, like a puzzle falling into place, he built a map of the city's culture. The conclusion? This world is broken just like ours used to be. He saw poverty, crying children, tired workers, hypocrisy dressed up in business suits and smiling PR campaigns. But unlike the others, Kawaki didn't feel hopeless. He felt angry. Because he knew someone who had changed his entire world without ever asking for praise. Only Father can make a place like this better. And that's when he saw the tower. Tall, smug, covered in reflective glass. The kind of building that screamed, "I pay zero taxes and sleep like a baby." Without a moment's hesitation, Kawaki's eyes narrowed. I'll rob it. Not for fun. Not even for vengeance. But because someone inside that tower had answers, and answers were more valuable than gold. He flicked his fingers together and transformed, silver hair, one eye covered, slouchy posture. A man he'd seen in his father's memories. Kakashi Hatake. Mysterious. Anonymous. The perfect disguise. Not that anyone in this world knows what a copy ninja looks like. Still, it felt oddly respectful. Kawaki dashed across the skyline, holding back most of his speed. He could run at Mach 300 on a good day, but the pavement here would catch fire if he even attempted Mach 4. He settled on Mach 3, a stroll, really. With each passing moment, he weaved through the security systems, walking unseen past guards, phasing past doors, and occasionally snatching wallets with silent precision. He didn't even take the money, just flipped through the IDs, phone screens, and keycards. These people aren't warriors, he noted as he scanned another open laptop. They're advertisers? A pause. What the hell is a marketing director? For all the strength in his limbs, all the power surging through his veins, Kawaki's real weakness wasn't a physical scar. It was memory. Sharp, unforgiving, and far too vivid. The deeper Kawaki moved into the building, the more his excitement faded. Gone was the quiet thrill of stealth. The flicker of pride when he pickpocketed a wallet without being seen. The mission, the objective, it all blurred when he reached level B3. Because there it stood, cold. Still. Glass. The container. A cylindrical cage of reinforced glass and tubes, humming faintly with a soft electric pulse. Almost identical to the one where Ishiki Atsutsuki had once held him. Where Amato's tools had turned his body into something useful, where his screams had echoed off walls that never cared. Kawaki didn't scream this time. But he trembled. Rage began to burn low in his chest like a bonfire in a dry forest, impossible to contain. His hands curled into fists, shaking. His breath came faster. Chakra surged out before he could think, like a dam breaking, like a child's sob after weeks of holding it in. The world tilted. Boom. A wave of power exploded outward, raw, unfiltered chakra erupting into a storm. Machines bent. Walls cracked. The very air seemed to collapse under the force. Sirens blared above. The lab was reduced to scorched metal and ruined wires. The glass tube shattered, a mockery of the one that had caged him, and Kawaki collapsed to his knees, eyes wide, body shaking, his skin flickering with patches of black and gold from the karma backlash. He could barely breathe. Father. And then he was held. Strong arms, firm and warm, caught him before he hit the ground fully. Familiar chakra surrounded him like a protective cocoon. A scent of wind and oak. The unmistakable feeling of absolute safety. Naruto Uzumaki stood there, his face calm, but his eyes told a deeper story, one of sorrow, fury, and love so fierce it could silence storms. I understand, Naruto whispered, crouching down and holding Kawaki tighter. So relax. Let it go. There were no lectures. No blame, just a father, steady as a mountain, whispering the only words Kawaki truly needed. I'll never let anything bad happen to you. Kawaki's breath hitched, and then he slept. Not from exhaustion. From trust. His body healed even as he rested, chakra curling gently around his wounds like bandages made of light. And in the chaos of the lab, Naruto simply raised his hand. Gone. With one thought, the wreckage vanished, dissolved, erased from existence. There was no evidence of their presence, no ruined lab or scorch marks on the steel walls. Just an empty room. And the whisper of something unseen leaving the building. Lex Luthor. The LexCorp tower was still trembling at its bolts. Elevators had halted. Lights flickered. People were running evacuation drills that no one had paid attention to in years. But Superman was floating calmly in the aftermath, his red cape fluttering gently behind him like a flag declaring hope. His eyes glowed faintly blue as they scanned the interior, every crack in the walls, every inch of debris, every molecule of heat. And yet, nothing. No signs of an intruder. No residue of explosives. No prints. No footprints. No anything. It was as if a miniature earthquake had been politely escorted out of the building before it made too much of a mess. Superman frowned. Superman. The voice came from behind. Calm. Eloquent. Mildly smug. Lex Luthor stood near the scorched carpet, dressed in a dark gray suit that probably cost more than a small country's annual budget. His security team scuttled behind him like ants, scanning every inch of the building with eyes that would never be trusted to actually find anything. Superman turned slowly, his expression unreadable. Lex. Lex tooted as he examined a cracked screen. I assume you're here to gloat? He said. You always seem to arrive at the most inconvenient times. Heroic intuition, or just good PR? Superman didn't bite. He never did. I'm here to help. Someone caused damage to this building, and it's my job to keep people safe. Lex's lips curled. Astonishing. You must be thrilled. I've taken a loss. Half my lab is in ruins. A few billion in damages, give or take. He didn't look thrilled. Or angry. He looked intrigued. Which was worse? There are no miracles, Lex thought as he turned away. No one walks out of a blast like that unscathed, and no one breaks into my tower without leaving a single trace unless they want to. His mind was already calculating, was it sabotage? A rival? An inside job? Or something entirely alien? Superman's eyes narrowed, gently glowing as he looked through the walls again. Still nothing. But in the quiet, he could sense it, not a presence, not exactly. More like an absence. A place where energy had been edited out. Whoever did this, he thought, is either hiding something or someone. I'll look into it, Superman offered. Lex gave him a slow, sardonic smile. How chivalrous. But I decline. I'll manage my own cleanup, thank you. You can go fly around and punch meteors or whatever it is you do when you're not hovering ominously. Superman gave him a long, quiet look. If you need help, Lex, you know where to find me. Lex straightened his cufflinks and didn't answer. He didn't need to. His smile was already doing all the talking. Go away. You're the wrong kind of hero for this city. Lex Luthor was not a man who enjoyed being wrong. He was, of course, rarely wrong, but the universe had an annoying way of delivering unexpected punches to the jaw when things were going too well. Like today. For example, 1 minute his lab was humming along with delightful, dangerous science, and the next. Boom. A mysterious chakra-wielding vigilante had waltzed through his security systems, poked around his research like it was a grocery store aisle, and then exploded. And the worst part? He'd missed it by 16 minutes. If he had stayed to review one more quarterly report, he might have met the masked menace face to face. So naturally, Lex was furious. "Show me the feed," he snapped. Mercy, ever the competent and terrifying assistant, passed him the black-paneled tablet like it was the sword of Damocles. Lex tapped and scrubbed through footage at lightning pace, until he froze. There. A flicker. A flash of black. A figure, masked, silver-haired, one eye covered. Tall. Graceful. Wearing an outfit that screamed, "I know 20 ways to kill you with a butter knife." "Pause," Lex said softly. The image stopped on a frame of Kakashi Hatake, or rather, Kawaki disguised as Kakashi, as he passed beneath one of the internal cameras. His figure blurred slightly with speed, but the illusion was good. Very good. Lex leaned forward. "Who are you?" He zoomed in. Tactical gear. A forehead protector with a scratch symbol. A half mask hiding the mouth. Nothing that should exist outside of a comic book convention or a drug-fueled fever dream. But Lex had long since abandoned the idea that reality played by its own rules. Metahumans, gods, aliens, reverse speedsters, what was a ninja among such company? Still, the outfit triggered something. League of Assassins. The name dropped into his mind like a bowling ball into a teacup. "Contact them," Lex said. "I want a meeting. Now." Mercy blinked. "Sir, contacting the League." "Spare me the lecture, Mercy. Either they've gone rogue, or someone's dressing up in their tailor's worst nightmares. Either way, I want names." And beneath the fury, Lex was calculating. Whoever this masked figure was, they weren't just reckless. They were powerful. The explosion hadn't come from any bomb he could detect. It had been a pulse, raw energy from within. Energy-based intruders. Disguises. Precise movement. They didn't come to kill, they came to look. Which meant this wasn't war. This was reconnaissance. And that was worse. Boruto Uzumaki was many things: annoying older brother. Prodigal pain in the neck. Casual icon of misunderstood youth. But at the moment, he was a thief. A grinning, lightly sweating, American currency-toting thief, walking through the shadowy edge of Metropolis with an invisible strut and a ninja smugness that could be seen from space. Okay, stealing's bad. But it's not really stealing if it's from a corrupt politician, Boruto muttered, pocketing the mayor's wallet into his spatial storage scroll like a grandma hiding cookies from her diet. The wallet had been easy enough. He didn't know the man, of course, but a heavy security detail, tailored suits, and 3 luxury cars was practically an invitation. If you're going to flaunt your wealth like a shiny beacon, Boruto reasoned, then at least protect your chakra points. Amateurs. He had no idea what American dollars were worth, but they were colorful and crinkly, and could apparently buy snacks. That was enough. Boruto had just ducked into a quiet alley to begin operation, learned this dumb language when a flicker of movement caught his eye. A man. In the sky. Flying. Huh! Boruto blinked and stepped back into the open, his gaze narrowing. No wings. No seals. No jutsu tags on his back. Just a red cape flapping like a movie poster, and the man's body hovering with the grace of a dragon and the glow of a power plant. Boruto's instincts flared. His hand twitched toward a kunai. Then he paused. Instead of attacking, Boruto did what his father always insisted was the first step of shinobi work: observe. His eyes pulsed, Byakugan activating in an instant, his field of vision stretching to 360 degrees, seeing through bone, chakra coils, and even the heart. But this time, he added something extra. Jugen. That mysterious eye was strange destiny tangled into its very threads, buzzing gently as it connected to something deeper. Boruto's gaze locked on the flying man, and what he saw made his stomach lurch. No chakra coils, he whispered. No elemental paths. No seal networks. Just raw energy. Alien. Almost divine. It glowed inside the man's cells, fueling muscle, blood, bone, all humming with unnatural life. That's not chakra, what the hell is that? Boruto whispered, leaning forward like a cat watching a ghost cross the garden. Far above, Clark Kent paused mid-flight. Someone, had pierced through him like a silent arrow. It wasn't just a stare, it was a full-blown scan. Deep and invasive. Like being read from the inside out. Superman narrowed his eyes. He looked straight down. But whatever he saw was gone. The presence vanished, like it had never existed. Okay, Clark muttered, floating motionless for a beat. That's the third weird thing today. First the explosion. Then the energy spike. Now the invisible pervert staring into his mitochondria. Great. Either we've got a magician or I just got side-eyed by a superpowered X-ray nerd. He flew off with a scowl and a whisper of wind. The Uzumaki family dinner table was lively. Not quite explosions in the dining room lively, although with Naruto around, that had certainly happened once or twice, but more like the quiet before the storm. The calm of a father sipping tea, a daughter hiding a smirk, and two sons trying very hard not to look like absolute failures. Naruto sat at the head of the table, serene as a monk, but his eyes sparkled with the mischief of someone who absolutely knew what you did last mission. So, he said, resting his chin on his palm with deliberate slowness, how was the mission? His voice was pleasant. Neutral, even. Which, if you asked Boruto, was the most dangerous tone of all. Himawari was the first to respond, not with words, but with a radiant smile and a hop into his lap, arms wrapping around his neck like a victorious kitten. Father, this is the result of my efforts, she whispered sweetly in his ear, carefully shielding her thoughts from her brothers. Not that it helped. Naruto chuckled. Her mind was like a brightly lit scroll, neat, elegant, and absolutely smug about her success. He saw everything, the stealth, the strategy, the jutsu control, the ethical reasoning. A solid A+ performance. You've done well, Naruto said, kissing the top of her head and smiling with quiet pride. Professional, unlike our so-called champions here. He didn't look at Boruto and Kawaki, but they felt it. Kawaki had the dignity to avert his eyes, folding his arms as if the dining table had suddenly become the most interesting object in the universe. Boruto, however, wasn't going down without a fight. Hey! I still got more money! He shot back, puffing up like a cat cornered by a cucumber. Naruto's face didn't change. But his aura did. The temperature in the room dropped by a fraction. A slight breeze rustled the scrolls on the wall. Himawari subtly scooted her chair away. You stole, Naruto said softly, from a good person. That one sentence landed like a kunai in Boruto's stomach. His instincts screamed run. Mum. Pop. He vanished in a flash of yellow. Outside the town, a gentle wind whistled through the trees. Boruto reappeared, hanging upside down from the front gate like a particularly noisy wind chime. Thick chakra ropes, probably overkill by most standards, wrapped around him like an elaborate birthday present. A small swirling gust of chilled wind, infused with the same chakra used to knock out S-ranked criminals, nipped at his ankles. This is child abuse, Boruto muttered, swaying slightly in the breeze. His chakra was sealed. His muscles wouldn't budge. And worst of all, he felt warm inside. The humiliation of being punished was somehow comforting. Ugh. What is this feeling? Is this what people mean when they say parenting works? He didn't know. He just knew he wasn't telling Kawaki. Back inside, Hinata walked in with a tray of tea, elegant as ever. She paused only slightly when she noticed the missing son. Where's Boruto? She asked mildly. Repenting, Naruto said, sipping his tea with the air of a man who just watered his bonsai and spiritually cleansed the air. Hinata nodded with approval and took her seat. Don't bring him in yet. Let him think about it. The other two kids sat very straight. Himawari was practically glowing, proud of her perfect record and unpunished status. Kawaki was internally questioning whether throwing that beaker in the lab had been entirely necessary. Next time, don't explode things. Got it. Naruto looked at his family, finally together at the table. His heart, once scarred by war and burdened by guilt, felt a little lighter. Tomorrow, he said casually, we'll be taking a proper tour of the city. I want you three to observe the politics, economy, and culture of this world. You mean spy on people, Kawaki translated. Educationally, Naruto corrected. Can I wear a fake mustache? Himawari asked excitedly. You may wear 3. Outside, Boruto sneezed violently and muttered something unprintable. The afternoon sun still clung stubbornly to the sidewalks of Metropolis, and Clark Kent, mild-mannered reporter by day, superhero by secret, walked with the kind of anxious shuffle one might expect from someone who definitely had a secret but hoped no one would notice. Beside him strode Lois Lane, brilliant, unstoppable, occasionally terrifying. A woman who, had she been born a shinobi, would have been ANBU by 13, Kage by 15, and ruling the 5 nations by breakfast. So, what do you make of the situation? Clark asked as he caught up, notebook in hand, pretending not to know anything about the explosion that had rattled LexCorp's pristine tower like an angry ghost. Lois didn't stop walking. Her heels clicked sharply against the pavement, echoing the rhythm of a mind already 6 paragraphs deep into her next exposé. Too early to say. But one thing's clear, whoever did this isn't a run-of-the-mill meta. Her eyes narrowed as they approached the still smoking perimeter. The building was gutted, and yet no casualties. No alarms. No witnesses. No CCTV footage. Someone wanted it that way. Clark nodded thoughtfully, his glasses sliding a little down his nose. He pushed them back up with a finger, just enough to stop the heat vision from accidentally triggering out of sheer emotional restraint. Who would do this? Clark, you've lived here 3 years. You should know the list of people with grudges against Lex Luthor reads like the guest list to Arkham's charity gala. That was true. Supervillains, corrupt CEOs, even disgruntled coffee interns, everyone had a reason to want Lex out of the picture. Could it be a meta who controls explosions? Like the one Flash apprehended last winter? Clark offered. Lois stopped. Turned. Stared. Clark, that guy could barely manage to blow up a lamppost, and Flash had to rescue him from his own shoelaces. And besides, he didn't have speed. Or invisibility. Or the ability to casually level a floor of LexCorp without harming a soul. Clark looked sheepish. Right. Good point. Lois gave a sigh that suggested she wanted to believe her partner was clever, but was now having serious doubts. No. Whoever this is, they're new. Or they've never wanted attention until now. She tapped her lip with a pen, eyes dancing with speculation. Honestly, between the explosion and the earlier incident with the runaway truck, I'd bet my press pass both are connected. You think it's the same person? Clark asked, intrigued. I think we might have a magician on our hands. Maybe not the stage kind. The real kind. I'll ask Sitara once I get a chance. He still owes me for not publishing that story about him accidentally turning the mayor into a frog. Clark blinked. Wait, what? Long story. Anyway. She resumed walking. Now my question is, what's got your journalism senses tingling all of a sudden? Clark froze, just a beat too long. What do you mean? I mean, Lois said, spinning around and poking his chest with her pen, you've been following my lead for months like a duckling in plaid, and suddenly you're asking actual investigative questions. Are you finally ready to graduate from fetching coffee? Clark chuckled, scratching the back of his neck. Maybe. Or maybe I just think this story's going to be big. Lois's eyes twinkled. There was that Kent charm again. Or maybe it was just a farm boy honesty that somehow survived in a city that chewed up truth and spat out headlines. Fine. But if we're doing this together, you better keep up. And no disappearing mid-interview again. That's twice this week. I had to use the bathroom. For 35 minutes? Bad sushi? Lois rolled her eyes so hard they nearly achieved orbit. Uzumaki family. The dinner table was not, by any means, an ordinary one. For starters, it had exactly one chair that remained perpetually empty, because Boruto had been suspended from it for mischief just hours earlier, and secondly, it currently hosted one of the most powerful men in the multiverse casually serving vegetable stew while delivering life lessons. Kawaki, who had been quiet for most of the meal, finally spoke up. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled slightly as they gripped the edge of the table. Father, I have also stolen. The words dropped like a shuriken in a silent room. Himawari paused mid-chew, and even the wind outside seemed to hush for dramatic effect. Naruto didn't look surprised. In fact, he remained perfectly calm, as if he'd known all along, which, of course, he had. I know, he said, gently setting down his spoon. But unlike your brother, you didn't know any better. Boruto, hanging upside down from the pillar outside, wrapped in chakra-infused ropes, now thoroughly chilled and with bits of leaf stuck to his face, sneezed violently in response, probably sensing he was being talked about. Kawaki looked down, expecting disappointment, punishment, a cold look, the sort he'd seen in Amato's lab. But instead, Naruto's voice carried only patient firmness. Boruto already knew the difference, and still acted carelessly. But you've never had someone to teach you. That's my job now. Something in Kawaki's chest, long locked away under steel and trauma, uncoiled just a little. He gave a quiet nod, the kind that meant I hear you and thank you. Now, Naruto continued, brushing a scroll into the table with a flick of his fingers, I'm going to share with you two things. First, the language of this country. Second, a brief overview of the major threats. As soon as he finished, a soft, golden light burst gently from the scroll like steam from a teapot. Symbols, shapes, letters, all flowing in a warm wave, drifted toward Boruto and Kawaki and were absorbed gently through their foreheads. Boruto, now back inside, and sulking, rubbed his temples. Ow. You couldn't have made that more gentle? It was gentle, Himawari chirped. You're just bad at learning. Naruto coughed politely to keep a chuckle from escaping. Now that you understand the basics, there's something else you need to see. Naruto waved a hand, and images floated in the air like genjutsu mirages. The first was of a man in blue and red, hovering in the air like a demigod with a cape. His eyes gleamed like twin stars, and his jawline could cut through steel. Next came a man in red, standing mid-round with lightning curling around his limbs. Then a green-suited man with a glowing ring. And then, even darker shapes, lank-haired tricksters, scowling billionaires, mad scientists, and armored warlords. These people, Naruto said, voice calm but charged, are not to be trifled with. Some are heroes. Some are villains. All of them are dangerous. Some might even make me serious if they truly fought at full power. This time, all three children stopped eating entirely. Boruto's chopsticks trembled midair. Himawari blinked. Kawaki stared at Superman's image longer than necessary, clearly sizing him up like a boy trying to guess if his father could win in a fight. So what do we do? Kawaki asked. Naruto smiled and poured more stew. Simple. Be smart. Be quiet. Don't start fights unless I tell you to. And if someone floats in the air glowing like a miniature sun, run. Or call me. You're making it sound like a horror story, Boruto grumbled. It's not, Naruto said. It's a learning experience. Himawari, always the one to speak from the heart, raised her voice with a gentle seriousness that only made her all the more adorable. Father, are we going to continue hiding? Naruto blinked, the question catching him mid-sip of tea. He set his cup down and smiled, not with the broad grin of the Hokage, but the softer, gentler smile only a father could give. No, we're going to live in the open. Hiding's not for us, we came here to enjoy life, not spend it under a blanket. Himawari's face lit up with joy, but just as quickly she furrowed her brows, a clear sign she'd been thinking deeper than anyone expected. But are we living openly, or are we supposed to hide this place? Naruto tilted his head, curious. I mean, she went on, fiddling with a loose thread on her sleeve, a ninja doesn't usually let people know where they sleep. Once a place is shared, it's no longer safe. Naruto was about to answer when Kawaki chimed in, voice steady and thoughtful as always. She's right. If we're not careful, this will become just like back home. People will come looking and they won't stop. Boruto, never one to stay silent when it came to tactics, or mischief, added from where he was sprawled upside down across an armrest. Stay hidden, old man. I want a challenge. Don't go scaring off the prey. It wasn't said with venom, but with a smirk and the glint of excitement in his eyes. It was the most Uzumaki thing Naruto had seen all day. Naruto looked at his children, his lovely, spirited children, and felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with tea or chakra. These were his legacies, his pride, his purpose. And they were already thinking like shinobi. Then, he said, nodding with mock gravity, this place will stay hidden. To everyone except those we allow. And if I do go out there, his grin widened mischievously, we won't be associated. Boruto gave him a thumbs up. Kawaki gave a satisfied nod. Himawari giggled and clapped her hands. Can we go on some missions together? She asked hopefully, turning toward her father with that starry-eyed look no dad could ever resist. Before Naruto could even answer, Hinata leaned over and gently kissed her daughter on the cheek. Of course, sweetheart. But first you need to show us you can handle missions on your own. Himawari nodded, determined. Kawaki straightened his back, as if ready for deployment. Boruto yawned dramatically, though the twinkle in his eyes betrayed his excitement. Naruto looked around the room, taking in the sight of his odd little army, bright, bold, brave, and utterly his, and couldn't help but smile again. The dining table glowed. Not just because of the warm lighting overhead, or the polished wooden surface, but because of the food. No, really. The food glowed. Golden rice steamed gently in bowls carved from smooth stone, shimmering with threads of chakra light. Sizzling meats and roasted vegetables sparkled faintly, their scents thick with earthy spice and something otherworldly. It was the sort of meal that made your stomach rumble and your soul tingle. Naruto, with sleeves rolled up and an apron still draped around his neck like a scarf of victory, clapped his hands together. Since your first mission's been completed and we've settled into our new home, he began, looking far too proud for someone who just made dinner by snapping his fingers, you get to eat food made by us. He gestured grandly to the table. Boruto's mouth hung open. Himawari blinked rapidly. Even Kawaki, who usually wore the expression of someone perpetually unimpressed, raised an eyebrow. Wait, you cooked this? Boruto asked suspiciously. Technically, yes, Naruto replied with a chuckle, but I cheated with chakra and summoned ingredients from a place even I don't fully understand. So if your hair turns purple temporarily, don't panic. Naruto. Hinata gave him the look. Naruto held up both hands. I'm kidding. Probably. Hinata, far more elegantly and a little more seriously, added. This food is different from what you're used to. It's filled with concentrated natural energy and pure chakra. It will help cleanse your body, strengthen your chakra coils, and stabilize your growth. As she spoke, the air around the table began to shimmer gently, almost as if the food were singing in a language only the soul could understand. Birds fluttered outside the window, chirping excitedly. Somewhere in the forest, a fox howled approvingly. We hadn't finished studying the right recipes before, so you were eating the beginner meals, Hinata admitted with a sheepish smile. But now you'll be dining like proper chakra cultivators. Boruto's jaw had officially dropped. Himawari looked like she might cry from happiness. Kawaki had already picked up his chopsticks. Naruto stood beside them now, arms crossed and face warm. From now on, he said, I'll be passing on my skills to you personally. Missions will get tougher. Training will be exhausting. But don't stress yourselves. He knelt slightly so he was level with them. I believe in you. I always have. Even if the whole world doubts you, I won't. I want you to surpass me, not the Hokage or the legend, but the boy I used to be. The one who had nothing, but never gave up. Silence. Just for a moment. Then what are we waiting for? Boruto suddenly blurted out, already reaching for a glowing dumpling. Yeah. Before it cools down. Himawari beamed as she joined him. This smells better than most things I've stolen, Kawaki muttered, already chewing. Naruto laughed heartily, and even Hinata giggled behind her sleeve. The night sky above the quiet ghost town was painted with starlight. A single wooden house, nestled beneath a canopy of chakra-infused trees, glowed warmly from within like a hidden sanctuary in a fairy tale. Inside, Naruto Uzumaki sat cross-legged in a sunken corner of the house, a room built for silence and secrets. The shelves around him were already filling with scrolls. Blank ones? New ones? Some were sealed tightly, others fluttered slightly as if restless to be used. A brush hovered in midair beside him, tip soaked in golden ink that pulsed faintly with life. He didn't move. Not yet. He was thinking. Not the kind of thinking that comes with solving math problems or working out enemy battle strategy. No, this was the heavy, quiet sort. The kind that slithered in when the house had gone quiet, when the children were sleeping and Hinata was humming somewhere upstairs. Naruto wasn't just a father anymore, or a legend, or a shinobi. Here, right now, in his stillness, he was just Naruto. A man with an old dream and a strange, new chance to chase it. What have I really created? He whispered aloud, to no one in particular. His voice echoed slightly in the silent scroll room. For all his power, for all the jutsu he'd mastered and the villains he'd defeated, Naruto couldn't help but feel a quiet truth. Many of his greatest techniques weren't truly his. He was a patchwork of other people's teachings. A Rasengan passed down from Jiraiya. Shadow clones from his academy days. Sage mode from the Toads. Kurama. 6 paths gifts from gods, ancestors, enemies, even aliens. Borrowed power, as Sasuke used to call it. Now, for the first time in decades, Naruto had no war to fight. No summit to lead. No Hokage paperwork. He had time. And time, he realized, was the most powerful jutsu of them all. It had been 10 years since he'd uncovered the ashes of the once mighty Uzumaki. He'd arrived too late. The inheritance chamber of the clan, whatever knowledge, techniques, or final messages they'd hoped to leave behind, had already been ransacked. Only broken seals remained, like forgotten tombstones. The last of us, Naruto had murmured that day, standing knee-deep in the dust of a lost people. The others were gone, crushed beneath the Shinju's fall, their chakra fed to a hungry tree in a war too big for anyone to win. They died without song or memory. Now, as he dipped his brush again and began forming a glowing spiral seal on the scroll before him, Naruto made himself a quiet vow. No more copies. No more borrowed power. From now on we create. He would build new Fuinjutsu. Strange ones. Beautiful ones. Seals that could fold space like origami or stitch a broken soul back together. Seals to protect, to teach, to store laughter and sorrow and everything in between. He'd make them with joy, like a craftsman, not a warrior. Because that's what the Uzumaki were supposed to be, creators. But Naruto didn't stop there. He had seen what the Otsutsuki could do. Immortals who traveled worlds and feasted on chakra like it was cake at a summer festival. He'd fought them, beaten them, but even now, something in their legacy bothered him. They lived too long. And he would be lucky to see 2 centuries, if that. His body, even reinforced by cosmic forces, wouldn't last forever. He hadn't cared at first. Death was inevitable. It had never scared him. But lately, he thought about them. About Boruto, still growing into his wild, tangled path. About Kawaki, trying so hard to believe he wasn't cursed. About Himawari, bright-eyed and still untouched by battle. If I go, he whispered, who will teach them the rest? So he began experimenting. In between cooking dinner and sealing garden weeds, he researched life force extension alongside Hinata. It became their hobby, no, their fun. She took notes, laughed at his wild theories, and offered quiet, brilliant suggestions when he got stuck. They worked in chakra circles and drank tea while discussing soul theory and genetic rejuvenation. You know, Naruto said once, we're technically trying to outscience a race of alien tree vampires. I know, Hinata giggled, but we are Uzumaki. And that made all the difference. The ghost town slept under a star-splattered sky, blanketed in silence so thick you could almost hear your own thoughts. Somewhere in the distance, the cold wind howled across the empty streets like a mournful spirit searching for a friend. And hanging upside down from a wooden post outside the family's newly built home was one Boruto Uzumaki, arms crossed, eyebrows twitching with fury, and nose slightly blue from the cold. I am going to die, he muttered, teeth chattering. My father is trying to kill me. This is it. This is the end. The chakra-suppressed ropes held firm despite his best attempts. He tried biting, burning, yelling, none of it worked. Not even begging. And worst of all, no one had come to check on him. Mom's probably making tea, he growled. Kawaki's probably meditating. And Himawari's probably painting flower patterns on her kunai. A gust of wind slammed into him, freezing his lips into a pout. This was training, apparently. Character building. Focus strengthening, his father had said. Boruto rolled his eyes. Focus? All I'm focused on is my frozen spleen. Meanwhile, inside the warmth of the wooden house, a home so infused with chakra and would release that it practically purred with safety, Hinata was experiencing a different kind of night. A much warmer one. Naruto, ever the overachiever, had decided that now was the time to make up for everything. Every missed birthday, every late-night meeting, every battle-worn silence from the old days. And with the help of time control, a very convenient gift he'd acquired from Mamashiki, refined and polished like a craftsman's favorite blade, their night was, how should one put it, generously extended. Hinata had once read that time was the greatest luxury. Tonight she found that quite true. You're not tired yet? She whispered, giggling. I've mastered infinite clones, time loops, and planetary survival, Naruto whispered back with a grin, but your smile still beats everything. He wasn't the boy who once fell asleep mid-mission anymore. He was something else entirely now. Powerful, yes, but playful, present, and most importantly, hers. And so, as the town outside lay cloaked in wind and moonlight, the house hummed with chakra, laughter, and the creaking of newly built furniture. It was a night both restful and ridiculous in equal measure. In Metropolis, explosions were about as common as pigeons. The average citizen had grown accustomed to the odd building collapse, a flying man in a cape zooming overhead, or a laser-eyed lunatic declaring world domination over lunch. Frankly, the people had developed a strange sort of urban resilience, half faith, half fatigue, with Superman floating somewhere in the center of it all like a particularly trustworthy weather balloon. Today, however, was not about capes or chaos. Today was about Bruno Mannheim, businessman, philanthropist, and suspected mob boss with a face that looked like it had been carved from granite and polished with ill intent. He stood on a grand podium in front of a shiny new park, all polished marble paths and suspiciously cheerful clown statues. Balloons floated. Confetti machines hissed. Children clapped. Somewhere, an old man sold overpriced hot dogs. It was, all things considered, a rather convincing illusion of community. This park, Bruno announced grandly, arms spread like an oily preacher, is my gift to the people of Metropolis. A place for joy, for peace. Sir, Lois Lane's voice cut through like a knife dipped in sarcasm. Aren't you making a loss by building this park? Ah, Lois. Dressed in sharp gray slacks and a glint in her eye that could make a dragon blink. She already knew where the money came from, laundered through fake charities, perhaps, or slipped in from less than legal arms deals, but she wanted him to say something dumb on camera. So far, Bruno had the sense not to. He smiled the smile of a man who counted bodyguards instead of blessings and casually marked Lois for future inconvenience. Possibly involving chainsaws. Then, just as Bruno raised the ceremonial scissors toward the ribbon, a whirring hum filled the air. Dozens, maybe hundreds, of tiny toy planes zipped into view. They trailed colorful mist, rainbow arcs painting the sky like a deranged fireworks display. At first, the crowd oohed and awed. Then the shooting started. The planes opened fire, actual fire. Not laser shows or party poppers. Bullets. Get down! One of Bruno's men yelled, leaping to block his boss like a loyal pit bull in Kevlar. Chaos. Absolute chaos. Children screamed. Parents shoved. A balloon stand exploded with a dramatic pop and shower of rubber confetti. Lois, calm as ever, ducked behind a popcorn cart with Clark Kent in tow. She nibbled a kernel. Relax, Clark. Superman will take care of it. Clark, who was Superman, tried not to sigh. It was very hard being both comforted and accused of laziness in the same breath. He scanned the sky, trying to spot a window to vanish and change clothes, when... Crack! A jagged streak of purple lightning split the sky. It didn't flash. It slithered, curling through the air like a living serpent of light, crackling with power. In a heartbeat, it struck the toy planes, 1, 2, 10, 20, until the sky was raining sizzling plastic. Gasps rang out. The crowd froze. Atop a streetlight, standing with his hands in his pockets like he just won a fairground prize, was a boy no older than 14. Blonde hair that glowed like molten gold. Blue eyes sharper than his smirk. And an aura of amusement so palpable, Clark could almost smell the mischief. That's not good, Clark muttered under his breath. Because Clark had seen power like this before. He had once broken tractors in a tantrum. He'd shattered doors and frightened animals before he even knew what restraint meant. And power, raw, untamed, emotionally charged, was terrifying in children. The wind carried dust like gossip as Boruto Uzumaki landed in a crouch, boots cracking a pavement tile with the confidence of someone who wanted to be seen. A gust rolled past, sweeping through the smoke left behind by dozens of miniature planes, turning the aftermath into a scene straight from a comic book, except this wasn't fiction. Not anymore. He rose slowly, cape fluttering behind him. Okay, it wasn't technically a cape, but it moved like one and that's what counted. The bright blue of his jacket caught the sunlight, and for a moment he looked every bit the young savior. Everything is fine now, Boruto said, half grinning, half posing like he definitely hadn't practiced that line in front of a mirror. Around him, the crowd began to reappear like squirrels after a storm, timid, twitchy, and unsure if it was really over. Murmurs filled the park. Is that a new hero? He's just a kid. Where did he come from? Boruto heard them all. And oh, he savored it. After all, hadn't he been waiting for this? Finally a chance to step out of his father's colossal shadow. No longer just the Hokage's son or lazy genius. He could be something more. He would be. Make a name for yourself, his father had said with that infuriating calm wisdom, then vanished like he just handed Boruto a grocery list instead of a destiny. Now, here he was. Dust swirling. A city watching. And a rich man approaching. Bruno Mannheim walked like a man who owned not just the land beneath his feet, but the clouds overhead too. He wore a tailored suit and a politician's smile, warm, practiced, and absolutely not to be trusted. Still, he moved with purpose, flanked by guards like slightly less fashionable barn owls. Young man, he said, voice smoother than silk over a dagger, thank you for your help. My name is Bruno Mannheim. I always repay my debts. He extended a hand and a card, both of which Boruto took, reluctantly. The card felt expensive, like it could buy secrets. A personal number gleamed in gold lettering. It was nothing, Boruto said with a shrug, though his voice had the kind of edge that suggested he wanted it to be something. He studied Bruno carefully, not just with his eyes, but with the Byakugan. The famed Hyuga bloodline limit flared to life, invisible to the crowd, and Boruto watched the subtle quickening of the man's heartbeat. It thumped with the rhythm of evasion, guilt, and secrets held far too close to the chest. Do you know the reason for the attack? Boruto asked, folding the card into his pocket with practiced ease. Bruno offered a chuckle, charming, hollow. Unclear. Possibly someone from my past. He was lying, of course. Or rather, half-truthing, which was just as bad. Did the culprit establish any contact? Toyman, Bruno answered after a pause, the name falling like a sour fruit. Left a message. Something theatrical. Boruto narrowed his eyes but nodded. I'll be watching you. And just like that, he was gone. No smoke. No lightning. Just gone. One blink he was there, the next he wasn't. The crowd gasped again, whispering words like teleportation, ninja, and seriously, where do these people keep coming from? Bruno, meanwhile, stood still for a long moment, eyes narrowed as he stared at the empty space Boruto had occupied. That ghost can't let me rest even in death, he thought bitterly, clenching his fists. Toyman. The annoying little bug from years past had come back to haunt him through proxies and puppets. And now, to make matters worse, a golden-haired, blue-eyed child with lightning in his fingertips had stepped in, drawn attention, and offered just enough suspicion to derail Bruno's entire month's worth of perfectly legal business. Reschedule everything, he muttered to his assistant. And double security. He was starting to get a headache. Two figures hovered in the sky above Metropolis, cloaked in clouds and quiet tension. One wore a red cape that rippled like a flag of old ideals. The other, a boy no older than 16, wore confidence like armor, and the wind like wings. Who are you? Clark Kent, Superman, asked, his voice low, calm, unmistakably firm. Boruto floated just across from him, arms folded lazily, wind chakra subtly woven into the air beneath his feet. There were no flares, no visual effects. No one below would even notice he existed, unless he wanted them to. My name's Boruto, he said, grinning like he knew a secret, and enjoyed knowing it. And you're Clark Kent. Works at the Daily Planet. Partners with a woman who's clearly too smart not to know your secret. Clark's eyes narrowed, just slightly. You should take this double identity thing more seriously, Boruto added with a chuckle. You're glowing with solar energy. You float. Your heartbeat and aura are identical. Come on, I figured it out, and I'm not even trying that hard. The blunt honesty, delivered with youthful arrogance, hit Clark like a slap of wind chakra to the pride. He blinked. He read my life energy? What does that even mean? How much can he see? Boruto smirked, sensing the reaction. You look surprised. I didn't know energy signatures were something people could read, Clark admitted, trying not to sound defensive. He's not even breaking a sweat. Who is this kid? They're not usually, Boruto said, casually glancing at his nails. But I'm not usual. Definitely not. Also, yep. That's the most punchable face I've seen today. Clark kept a smile off his face, barely. Thanks for the advice, he said diplomatically. But what are you doing here? Same thing you are, Boruto replied, floating lazily in a circle around him. Helping people. Punching bad guys. Getting strange looks from civilians. The usual. Clark watched him, X-ray vision subtly active, though it showed nothing abnormal. Boruto's body read like any normal teenager. Muscles, bone, organs. No armor, no gadgets. just power humming inside. He's human. But not really. And there's more going on underneath. Clark frowned slightly. You're strong, he said carefully. Boruto beamed. I know. Ugh. Definitely punchable. Still, Clark had dealt with worse. This wasn't the first time a teenage superpowered wildcard had floated into his life with zero context and maximum attitude. If you're staying in the city, we could work together, Clark offered. He didn't like unknowns, and Boruto was a walking unknown. But better allies than enemies. You seem capable. Boruto tilted his head. Who calls the shots? That stopped Clark short. Of course. Of course, that's what this kid would ask. There was a beat of silence in the sky. We don't call shots, Clark finally replied. We cooperate. Boruto grinned wider. So I'll take that as a no. And then crack. The air sparked around him. Not from anger. From challenge. Clark felt it, an itch along his skin. The same sensation he felt when he stood too close to lightning just before it struck. He wants to fight me. Seriously? Clark sighed, glancing toward the sun for strength. I don't want to fight a child, he said. Good news, Boruto replied, dropping into a ready stance. I'm not just a child. The lightning lad and the man of steel. A flash of purple split the sky. The air cracked, trembling from the lightning bolt that lanced across the rooftop battlefield. Clark saw it. He even heard the shift in Boruto's chakra, but his body didn't move fast enough. Not because it couldn't, but because he didn't let it. The lightning struck true, and Clark Kent, Superman, flinched. Only for a moment. He stood still in the air, his chest smoking faintly where the bolt had struck. His cape flapped behind him in the wind like nothing had happened. Are you done? He asked, voice calm. Steady. The kind of voice used by men who carried worlds on their shoulders. To Boruto, it felt like being looked down on, and not just in the literal sense. His eye twitched. TCH. He didn't even budge. He clenched his fists as purple static danced between his knuckles. I hit him. I hit him full force. What the hell is this guy made of? Clark tilted his head slightly, taking in Boruto's posture, the swirling chakra, the storm in his eyes. He's strong. Not just in power. He's been train-driven. Clark recognized that fire. He'd seen it in mirrors. In Lex. In Batman. In himself, when he was younger and trying to prove something. But what Clark didn't know, what even Boruto sometimes refused to acknowledge, was the shadow that clung to his back. The one shaped like his father. Naruto Uzumaki. Boruto had grown up under that mountain. The legend. The hero. The impossible man who tamed demons, gods, and nations alike. The man with 100 names, and not a single one left room for a son trying to make a name of his own. And then there was her. Himawari. His adorable little sister, who turned out to be a once-in-a-millennium prodigy with the Byakugan flaring like sunfire at age 3. At 11, she was already more graceful, more precise, more Hyuga than he'd ever been. She had taken to the gentle fist like it was second nature. Boruto had laughed once when she asked to spar. She knocked him flat in 3 strikes. Dad always said talent means nothing without effort, but come on, he thought bitterly. She was born for this. I just had to catch up. That frustration had driven him to Kakashi. To Sasuke. To those long nights where his muscles screamed and his pride bled and every part of him ached to not be just the Hokage's son. And now this flying alien with the golden boy smile stood there as if Boruto's best shot was a mild breeze on a sunny day. You're holding back, Boruto muttered, eyes narrowing. Clark raised an eyebrow. And you're surprised? TCH. Fight me for real. Clark's face hardened. No. That single word felt like a slap. Not because of what it meant, but because of how it was said. Without anger. Without threat. Just refusal. If you asked Clark Kent what his day had looked like when he woke up that morning, he might have said something rather sensible like coffee, report filing, mild threat from Lex Luthor, and possibly Lois calling me slow for the 5th time. What he certainly wouldn't have expected was being zapped in the leg by a blonde teenager dressed like an electric shuriken with something to prove. Floating above the rooftops, Clark looked calm as a man on a quiet fishing trip. His cape swayed in the wind like a flag of boredom. His eyes, glowing faintly, regarded the youth before him with polite curiosity. "Are you done?" he asked, as if Boruto had merely sneezed too loudly at dinner. And that, of course, was the last straw. Boruto's eye twitched. His hair sparked. Somewhere in the background, thunder dramatically grumbled like a hungry dragon woken early from its nap. "Oh, I was just getting started," he muttered, voice dripping with the kind of self-importance found in boys trying very hard not to sound 12. Without another word, Boruto powered up in the most dramatic way possible. Lightning, actual, honest Eurasian lightning, raced along his limbs, curling around his body like affectionate snakes. His pupils sharpened, his Byakugan flaring to life like twin moons, and his Jugen pulsing ominously, just to let everyone know that yes, he meant business. From a rooftop several blocks away, an unlucky pigeon exploded. He activated lightning armor, level 1, which in shinobi terms was something like slapping on a magical race car suit and saying, "Catch me if you can." Sasuke had refined this technique from the Reikige's original model, and now Boruto, his very best, least punctual student, was about to put it to the test. 10 minutes, Boruto reminded himself. After that, my muscles might turn to pudding. But it'll be worth it. Clark raised a brow. Not in fear. Not even in alarm. Just curious, like a man watching someone try to juggle swords and wondering if they'd done it before. Boruto vanished in a pop, reappearing a fraction of a second later with a sonic boom that startled every cat in a 3-block radius. His sword, crackling with chakra, was gripped tightly in one hand, tracing a silver-blue arc of destruction straight for Superman's leg. The technique? Hell thrust formula. A move so aggressive it had only ever been taught to people who wanted to stab mountains for fun. Boruto had refined it down to a one-finger concentrated channel through the blade, like trying to punch through reality with a lightning-coated pencil. The slash connected. A spark. A hiss. A sudden clang like someone dropped a magical anvil in the sky. And then... "Ah!" Boruto cried, recoiling. The blade, his prized blade, shivered in his hand, clearly offended by what it had just hit. It hadn't broken, but it had dented. And in Boruto's book, that was basically the same as getting spit on by fate. Not willing to let the embarrassment sink in, Boruto tossed a lightning bomb at Clark's face, a spinning orb of doom that looked like someone had squeezed a thundercloud into a tennis ball. It hit. Clark wobbled. Ever so slightly. Which, in Superman terms, was the equivalent of a mortal man doing backflips while bleeding from the ears. Boruto landed a safe distance away, panting slightly, his pride bruised more than his sword arm. Clark, on the other hand? He was smiling. And not a smug smile, either. Not the "I'm bulletproof and this is adorable" smirk. No, this was something softer. Nostalgic. Almost grateful. There was blood on his leg. Superman, Clark Kent, the Man of Steel, the bulletproof alien who once headed a comet, was bleeding. "You're really strong," he said, voice warm and without a trace of sarcasm. "But you need to be careful." Boruto blinked. Huh? "If you always swing with your whole heart, it'll break when the world doesn't swing back," Clark said kindly, as if he were quoting something Ma Kent once told him after he'd melted a tractor. Boruto wasn't sure whether he wanted to punch the guy again or ask him for life coaching. He frowned, arms crossed. "I'm not fragile." Clark smiled again, that frustratingly wise smile that parents use when their kids claim they definitely didn't touch the cookie jar. Boruto Uzumaki had been insulted before, mocked for his name, for his flashy chakra color, even once for his hair, lemon puff. Konoha Maru had muttered half asleep. But nothing, had stung quite like that smile. That calm, friendly, you did your best sports smile from the last son of Krypton. It was the kind of smile adults gave when they thought you were cute but wrong, like a toddler trying to use chopsticks. It said, "Nice try." Boruto's eye twitched. His hair flared again. "Scram, costume freak," he snapped, the insult punctuated with a crack of lightning around his fists. "I'm not here to hold hands with you." Clark floated a little higher, confused and blinking. He'd seen anger before, rage even. But this? This was teenage pride, concentrated and condensed into a chakra-enhanced lightning ball of hormones and hurt feelings. Oh boy, Clark thought. It's the Smallville tractor incident all over again. Boruto's Jugen activated mid-glare, warping the space around him like a heatwave on pavement. This time, he wasn't holding back, not one bit. His fists glowed as he formed not one, but two Rasengan, spheres of spiraling chakra the size of baby bears, twirling with reckless energy on either side. Let's see you smile at this, Boruto growled. Clark raised an eyebrow. Then Boruto threw them, not at him, oh no, but to his left and right. Clark frowned. What in? Boom. Two identical Rasengans suddenly rocketed from above and below like divine bowling balls from opposing heavens, honed in on the unshakable target that was the Man of Steel. No fair, Clark muttered, trying to pivot in midair, but the pressure closed in faster than a Daily Planet deadline. The twin Rasengan grinded. That was the only word for it. Clark was caught between them like a marble in a vice, and even he, the indestructible, unshakable Clark Kent, gritted his teeth as the spiraling vortexes scraped across his body. Right, Clark muttered. No more playing. With a breath so deep it might have shaken the ozone layer, he focused for the first time, not to dodge, but to attack. Boruto's lightning flickered. His chakra dipped dangerously low. His eyes dimmed, and his bones groaned under the weight of his techniques. He didn't even see the heat beam. It wasn't rage or hatred, just force. A searing line of heat larger than any Clark had ever dared use on a living being, born out of necessity, and maybe, just maybe, concern. If the kid didn't stop, he'd hurt himself. Boruto didn't scream. He didn't gasp. He just vanished into the sky like a shooting star launched in the wrong direction, his figure trailing smoke and dignity like loose baggage. Clark stood there for a moment, clothes shredded, cape singed, the faint smell of lightning-charged cotton in the air. He was bleeding. Actually bleeding. Well, he muttered to himself, floating there in the silence of his own bruised muscles. That was new. His body ached, his nerves still buzzing from the Rasengan pressure cooker experience, and his skin glowed like he just rolled across the surface of the sun. But somewhere deep within, beneath the pain and confusion, he felt stronger. Huh. He didn't like it. It felt unnatural, like skipping 10 gym levels just by drinking a funny smoothie. Still, his thoughts drifted to the blonde boy he just torpedoed into next week. What if I broke his spirit? Because that was the thing about power, it could punch harder than you meant to. Especially pride. Especially a shinobi's pride. The crater wasn't particularly deep, but it looked like it should have been. It was the kind of pit that told stories, of flashy power, prideful recklessness, and one very dramatic tumble into the dirt. At the very bottom, there lay one slightly fried ninja, Boruto Uzumaki, heir to the storm, current owner of zero chakra and just enough modesty to wish he had a shirt. His pants, mercifully, had survived. Somehow. Clark hovered over the wreckage, cape fluttering in the breeze like a disappointed parent's sigh. X-ray vision made locating Boruto easy. What came next, however, was the tricky part, talking to a kid who'd just been laser blasted into next week. He's alive, Clark confirmed mentally, landing with a gentle crunch of scorched grass. Barely, but alive. Boruto was twitching, whether from pain, shock, or sheer humiliation, Clark couldn't tell. His once pristine hair was now caked with dirt, and the faint golden crackle that had danced around his body was gone, replaced by charred skin and labored breaths. The burn across his abdomen was raw and angry, a grim reminder of what heat vision could really do when not properly restrained. Boruto, Clark said, crouching down. Breathe. Slowly. You're safe now. The boy's reaction was immediate. He tried to crawl away, eyes wide and panicked, but his arms wobbled like overcooked noodles and gave out with a soft thud. He hissed in pain and froze, face down in the dirt. Clark winced. Hey, it's all right. I'm not going to hurt you. His voice was calm, even, like talking to a wild animal that had just been hit by a car. Boruto blinked, his vision swimming. For a terrifying moment, he looked so small, not the boy who had blitzed Superman with lightning blades and dimension-crushing Rasengan, but a frightened child caught in a storm of his own making. What was I thinking? Clark wondered. He's not a villain. He's just a kid. Gently, Clark pulled the boy upright and tore what was left of his cape to wrap around the gash. It was crude, but it would help until Boruto's ridiculous healing factor kicked in, assuming he had one. Clark wasn't entirely sure. This was far outside his league. You alright? He asked. Boruto didn't answer at first. He stared at the ground, then at his trembling hands. Finally, his voice emerged, quiet and frayed at the edges. It hurts. Clark nodded. Yeah. It usually does the first time. Boruto didn't ask what he meant. He understood. That burning sensation in his gut, both literal and emotional, wasn't just from the beam. It was the reality of it all. He wasn't untouchable. He wasn't some chosen prodigy riding the coattails of his father's legend. He was just a boy who bit off more than he could chew. And for the first time, he was scared. But Boruto was Uzumaki through and through, and Uzumakis didn't cry. At least not when the enemy could see. Thanks for the offer, he muttered eventually, voice scratchy as he avoided Clark's gaze. But I'll go home on my own. I just need a little time to heal. Clark didn't argue. He simply sat beside him for a moment, cape fluttering gently in the wind. You're strong, Clark said softly. Reckless. But strong. Boruto's head dipped, a flicker of annoyance flashing across his expression. TCH. Didn't feel strong. It never does the first time you lose, Clark replied. But trust me, if you learn from it, you'll come back even stronger. Clark Kent was used to many things: rogue robots, giant apes with laser eyes, even his boss Perry White yelling at him for bringing the wrong kind of coffee. But sitting in a half-smoked crater, shaking hands with a teen ninja who had very nearly sliced him in two with a Rasengan hurricane? That was a first. I wasn't at my strongest, Boruto admitted, brushing some soot from his arms, which didn't help much. Didn't use my tech? Would have been scrap metal anyway, seeing how unharmed you are. There was a touch of sulk in his tone, as if he were simultaneously annoyed and just a little impressed. Which, to be fair, was better than being unconscious and angry. Clark, ever the optimist, gave him a faint smile. So not your final form? Boruto gave a proud huff, arms crossed. Not even close. But then he looked away, his eyes distant. You won, so what are your conditions? He asked solemnly. It was the kind of question that made Clark blink. Not because of the words themselves, but because of how Boruto said them. There was no bitterness, no gritted teeth or flaring pride. Just a calm willingness to accept defeat, and honor a promise. Even with cracked ribs. He really is a warrior, Clark thought. Loyal to the core. Bit impulsive. Definitely stubborn. Clark shook his head. Nothing much, he said. Just don't cause collateral damage. Don't play God. Don't kill. And please, please, don't bring buildings down just to prove a point. Boruto relaxed. Just a little. We already follow those rules. Clark raised an eyebrow. Even the last one? Boruto coughed. Mostly. Unless my parents are really, really angry. Right. Parents who trained him to be a walking lightning bolt. Should have guessed. Thanks for the advice earlier, Clark said. About my disguise. I didn't think anyone could see through it. Boruto smirked. You're too obvious, man. Energy signature, life force, facial structure, the glasses, it's all there. Might as well wear a name tag. Clark chuckled, shaking his head. Well, if you wouldn't mind, let's be friends. Not just co-workers. The offer came with an outstretched hand, dusty and slightly singed. For a brief second, Boruto just stared at it. Friends? He repeated softly, like it was a word he hadn't heard in a long time. Then, finally, he took it. Something clicked, a simple handshake that bridged two worlds, one alien, one shinobi, both carrying the weight of enormous expectations. With the moment sealed, Boruto pulled a small scroll from his pouch. Then another. Then another. Clark began to wonder if this kid had a pocket dimension tucked in there somewhere. Here. Healing scrolls. Crush 'em like candy and your wounds go bye-bye. My gift since I started the fight. Clark took one gingerly, examining the pinky-sized scroll. Is it safe? Boruto rolled his eyes. It's not cursed, if that's what you're worried about. Clark smiled again. Thank you? I mean it. Yeah, Boruto muttered, rubbing his stomach. Just don't expect more. These are expensive. Clark pocketed the scrolls carefully. I'll return the favor. Maybe not with magic, but I do make a mean apple pie. Boruto blinked. Apple pie? You'll see, Clark said with a wink. The last thing Clark Kent expected on a perfectly ordinary afternoon was to get slapped by a dad. Not just any dad. The dad? And certainly not one with a golden hand that could flatten cities with a breeze. But let's rewind a bit. It started innocently enough, with Boruto sitting in a crater, looking like he'd been through 3 tornadoes and a small war. Despite the scrapes, dust, and smoldering shirtless state, he was smiling because of one voice. Clap clap, came the slow, calm sound of someone approaching through the dust, followed by a voice warm with affection. Well done, son. I am impressed. Boruto didn't roll his eyes. He didn't mutter a retort. No, for once, his response to his father's praise was a full-faced, goofy grin that could have powered the national grid. Clark turned instinctively, his heightened senses on full alert, and still he hadn't heard the man approach. That terrified him more than he cared to admit. There stood Naruto Uzumaki, sunlight catching on his golden cloak, his presence calm but immense, like the eye of a storm. And then, with a smile as casual as if he were offering lemonade. Thank you for the precious lesson to my son, Naruto said politely. So I shall reciprocate. Clark blinked. It was nothing. And then it happened. Naruto raised a glowing golden hand and moved so slowly Clark should have been able to dodge it. He didn't. Thwack. That was the sound Clark didn't hear. Because instead, he heard his brain turning into a weather satellite. His body spun. The air cracked. The very sky split down the middle like someone had torn the atmosphere in half. Skyscrapers crumbled into dust across several square miles. The rivers reversed. Cows somewhere in Kansas mooed nervously. And yet the hand never touched him. It stopped right by his cheek, no closer than a butterfly kiss. Clark dropped to his knees, trembling, staring at that golden palm like it was a live grenade. Every instinct in his Kryptonian biology screamed one thing. You're about to die. But death didn't come. Instead, Naruto simply let his hand fall and spoke calmly. Let's go. And just like that, father and son vanished into thin air. Clark sat there in the smoking crater of what used to be land and tried to process what had just occurred. He, the man of steel, the so-called invincible alien, had just been father-slapped into an existential crisis. It wasn't even a slap. It was the threat of one. He wasn't angry. No, oddly enough, he was inspired. That's what it feels like to meet someone leagues above me. He looked up at the clear blue sky, still split faintly like a paper crease where Naruto's aura had parted it. So this is the new world I live in. And he smiled. It wasn't the grin of a man who had lost. It was the grin of a man who had finally found the mountain he needed to climb. Meanwhile, in a cozy gym tucked beneath the Uzumaki household, a space filled with reinforced steel, chakra-infused wood, and a punching bag that occasionally groaned when hit, Boruto paced back and forth like an anxious cat who'd just lost a fight with a lawn sprinkler. His feet made soft thump-thump-thump sounds on the polished floor, but his mind was screaming. Dad, that was kinda unnecessary, wasn't it? Boruto finally muttered, rubbing the dull ache in his arms where the healing scroll hadn't quite finished knitting his nerves back together. Naruto was upside down on a bar, calmly doing one-handed sit-ups like gravity owed him a favor. Unnecessary? Naruto repeated with a little grin. Nah. Clark needed that. Boruto stopped pacing. You slapped Superman so hard the city trembled. He almost cried. Dad? Naruto dropped down from the bar, landing gracefully like a cat. His chakra shimmered faintly around his shoulders as he walked over and handed Boruto a cold bottle of spiced honey water. He'll be fine. That slap was a gift, Naruto said, his voice suddenly low and serious. Boruto raised a brow. A gift? Naruto sat on a mat and looked up at the ceiling thoughtfully. Clark's afraid of himself. He holds back so much, he forgets what he's capable of. That kind of power, if locked up for too long, becomes a prison. And when it breaks out, well, you know how messy that can get. Boruto frowned. But he's Superman. People already see him as the strongest man in the world. Naruto chuckled. That's the problem. He thinks that's enough. But strength isn't about reputation. It's about responsibility, legacy, control. And if he doesn't start growing with his powers, one day someone will come along who doesn't hold back, and that fear will destroy him. Boruto sat beside him, taking it in. So you slapped him to make him stronger? Exactly, Naruto said cheerfully, popping a rice cracker into his mouth. Boruto sighed. You know most dads would just send a motivational text. Naruto winked. I'm not most dads. Boruto sat on the gym floor, his face caught somewhere between confusion and disbelief. The bottle of spiced honey water in his hand had long since gone warm, but he hadn't moved in minutes. Across from him, Naruto leaned against the wall, one leg bent, the other stretched, as calm as a monk meditating after a bowl of ramen. You said Clark could be stronger than you? Boruto finally croaked, like he just swallowed a kunai sideways. Naruto simply nodded. Boruto blinked. Clark. Blue tights, cape, truth and justice Clark? Naruto smiled gently. Yep. The man could level planets without blinking. He's just too nice to ever try. Boruto stared at the floor, the weight of that truth crashing into him like a rogue Rasengan. It wasn't jealousy that twisted his stomach. It was that creeping, familiar, unwelcome guest, inferiority. How was he supposed to live up to that? His father wasn't just powerful, he was legendary. The kind of person people told stories about, carved into monuments, and compared everyone else to. And now, Boruto had to live up to that. He didn't realize he had asked the question aloud until Naruto sat up straighter. How? Boruto whispered. How do I even begin to live up to your name? There it was, raw, unfiltered, trembling like a leaf in the wind. Naruto's smile faltered, and for a moment, the strongest man in the universe looked a little bit guilty. That's my fault, he said quietly, ruffling his spiky blonde hair in a rare show of self-reflection. I should have guided you better. Not just trained you, but talked to you. About how hard it was for me too. About how scared I used to be. About the weight of being me. Boruto looked up, startled. But listen, Boruto, you're already stronger than I was at your age. Boruto's jaw nearly fell off. No, I mean it, Naruto said, chuckling at his son's expression. When I was 16, even with Sage Mode, you'd have wiped the floor with me. One-sidedly. I had bigger chakra reserves, sure, but my control was worse, my strategies were dumb, and I had more guts than brains. He grinned, eyes twinkling with pride and a hint of nostalgic pain. You, on the other hand, have my instinct, your mother's precision, and Master Sasuke's style. You're not a shadow walking behind me, you're blazing your own path. Boruto felt something inside him shift. Like a door had been kicked open in his chest. So I'm not a failure? He asked, and hated how young his voice sounded. Of course not. You're just someone who needs to believe he's going to be great. The rest? We'll get there together. One step at a time. Naruto stood and extended a hand. Starting with your next trial, Sage Mode. Boruto blinked. Wait. You're gonna teach me Sage Mode? I'd be a pretty terrible dad if I didn't, Naruto said, smirking. Well, you were kinda terrible for a bit, Boruto muttered before grinning. But I guess I can forgive you now. They clasped hands, and for the first time in a long while, Boruto felt something stronger than doubt bloom in his heart. Hope. And somewhere, just beneath that, excitement. The smell of sweat, oil, and faint ozone lingered in the Uzumaki basement gym-turned-workshop, where Boruto stood with a rare glimmer in his eye, not the cocky smirk or daring flash, but something a little more nerdy. Dad, he said, hesitating like he was confessing a secret crush. Can we bring Katasuki here? Naruto looked up from a strange gadget that was humming gently in his hand. Katasuki? You missed the lab? Boruto nodded, a bit sheepish. I know it's not very ninja or whatever, but I love the tech. The drones, the jutsu scrolls, the armor, the gravity gloves, especially the flying swords. And the laser rifle. That was so cool. He looked down at his hands. They're all good, but they're not enough. I need better tech if I'm going to keep up with people like Clark. There was a beat of silence. Then Naruto burst out laughing. Boruto blinked. What What's so funny? Naruto wiped a tear from the corner of his eye and grinned wide. You think you're the first Uzumaki to fall in love with cool gadgets? He held up a hand, and from a storage seal on his wrist, summoned a gleaming scroll case etched with strange runes and blinking with tiny chakra lights. Boruto, I approved all of Katasuki's research projects. I even improved some of them. All the blueprints, prototypes, and future upgrades, they're in my head. Boruto's jaw dropped. You like gadgets? Naruto leaned in, eyes sparkling mischievously. Of course I love gadgets. Do I look like Sasuke to you? All serious and broody with his cape blowing in the wind? Nah. I'm the guy who played video games in the Hokage office when no one was looking. He nudged Boruto in the ribs. You're a lot like me, kid. You've got my spark, my guts, and now you've got my toolbox. The only difference is, he ruffled his son's hair, you don't have the darkness I had to deal with. That makes you better. Boruto blinked, warmth spreading through his chest. So you'll build me new gear? Naruto smirked. Nope. You'll build it. I'll guide you, sure, but the next-gen tech ninja arsenal is gonna have your name stamped on it. Boruto suddenly felt 10 feet tall. Alright then, he said, fire in his eyes, let's make the coolest gear this world, or any world, has ever seen. Naruto chuckled. Now that's my boy. Naruto and Hinata, before the Superman fight. The Uzumaki household was, for the first time in ages, quiet. Not a training drone buzzed, not a chakra pulse hummed, and not a single Rasengan had been launched through a window in at least 3 hours. That, in itself, was a minor miracle. High above the ground, on a cushion mat laid over the tiled roof of their new home, Naruto and Hinata basked in the rare tranquility like two cats in a sunbeam. Birds chirped somewhere near the blooming peach tree, and small animals peeked curiously from the edges of the yard, drawn by the subtle hum of life energy radiating from the house like gentle music. Hinata, graceful and serene, wore a white bikini that looked unfairly divine in the afternoon light, and Naruto was trying very hard not to get distracted. Spoiler, he was failing miserably. Wrapped around her like ivy on a favored tree, Naruto tightened his hold slightly, sighing in satisfaction as her head rested gently against his chest. For someone capable of cracking mountains and distorting spacetime, this was the kind of power he actually lived for. What are you thinking about? Hinata asked softly, her voice like velvet across his skin. Naruto blinked. He could lie. Say something clever. Maybe quote a poem like Kakashi would. But honesty had always been his strongest suit, even if he wore it with a crooked grin. You, he said simply, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. And how I missed the feeling of your warmth. She smiled, a soft, knowing smile, and bopped his nose. Still sweet after all these years. He laughed, rubbing the tip of his nose. Also, I might have been thinking about how not to kill the kids during their next training session. Hinata let out a gentle laugh, and for a moment Naruto swore the flowers below bloomed brighter. She knew exactly what he meant. After all, this was a man whose casual stretch once caused an earthquake. I have a few ideas, she said. There's these games we played back home. Naruto raised a brow. Teaching through games? Genius! I am a mother of 2 overpowered shinobi children, she replied with a wink. And you've been gone a while, Mr. Hokage. That hit home a little more than he expected, and she saw the flicker in his eyes. I know, Naruto murmured. You carried so much on your own. Raising them. Training them. Protecting them, even me. Hinata didn't speak, only pulled herself closer. Her fingers gently traced a pattern on his chest. But I'm here now, he whispered. And I'm not letting go again. There was a silence that wasn't empty, it was full. Of love, of memory, of all the unspoken promises that didn't need words. Hinata lay curled beside Naruto, the sunlight weaving threads of gold through her long, midnight hair. Her lavender eyes shimmered with curiosity and concern, and Naruto, sun-touched and eternally chaotic, had that familiar look on his face. The one he wore when something serious was brewing in his usually ramen-soaked brain. She paused, catching the shift in his eyes. Serious now. Distant. He didn't speak right away. Instead, Naruto leaned in, kissed her forehead, and wrapped her tightly in his arms. For a moment, nothing existed except the rhythm of their breathing and the softness of their shared silence. I'm sorry, he murmured, eyes fixed on the expanse of endless blue above them. I didn't tell you sooner because I didn't want to worry you. Hinata's expression didn't change. She merely waited, trusting him to continue. I'll die soon if I don't change my genetic makeup. The words were blunt, like Konoha glass, and yet he spoke them without fear. I've pushed past every limit of our species. My body's only still alive because of my regeneration. But it's breaking. Slowly. Quietly. And if I don't act, I won't be around much longer. Hinata closed her eyes. She had suspected. Her Byakugan saw more than light and movement, it saw the truth behind smiles. And Naruto had been smiling a little too much lately. You have a solution, she said at last, a whisper wrapped in strength. Naruto nodded. Becoming an Otsutsuki. My DNA is a close match, we're their descendants, after all. If I assimilate that power, I might extend my life. Grow stronger. Stabilize everything. And the cost? She asked, already knowing. He didn't hesitate. Their minds. Their pride. Their cruelty. I might become something else. That's what scares me. Not dying, but becoming one of them. For a long moment, the air was heavy, like the hush before a storm. Then Hinata shifted, placing her hand gently over his, right above her stomach. Her skin was soft, but her grip firm, unyielding. You won't fall, she said. I won't let you. Naruto stared at her, emotions flickering behind his eyes like candlelight. Then he laughed, soft and warm, and finally allowed himself to relax. I know, he said, his fingers trailing her waist. I'll rest for now. I'll heal. And then I'll work on it. But while I'm still me. His hands wandered further with mischievous intent. Hiya! Hinata let out a squeak of surprise as his fingers found a particularly sensitive spot. Naruto grinned, eyes twinkling like a boy who'd just stolen cookies before dinner. But just as things were about to turn delightfully scandalous, a ripple of dread crawled up Naruto's spine like cold rain down the back of his shirt. He froze. Oh no. Hinata blinked. What is it? Boruto's doing something extremely dumb. The golden energy in his eyes flared as he felt it, panic, fear, pride, recklessness, all wrapped up in a single, Boruto-sized headache. I'm going to kill him, Naruto muttered, his voice dangerously calm as reality trembled around them. Hinata giggled, already standing. Already some food. You bring back the idiot. Naruto vanished in a flicker of golden light, leaving behind only a whisper and the echo of her laughter. Boys. A flower in Gotham. If Metropolis was a gleaming glass castle of ideals and daydreams, then Gotham was the broken, soot-stained cauldron that had once tried to boil away its sins and failed spectacularly. Dark alleys choked with cigarette smoke. Rooftops that sighed under the weight of rusted billboards. And the air, it smelled like regret mixed with gasoline and damp concrete. And standing atop one of the tallest, most uninviting skyscrapers in the entire city was a girl who looked like she belonged in a sun-drenched field of sunflowers rather than this crime-painted canvas. Himawari Uzumaki. 11 years old. Slightly overprepared for fieldwork, thanks to a sealed scroll pouch nearly as big as her torso. Dressed in black, blue, and pastel pink. With hair like ink and eyes like moonlight, calm, curious, and currently unimpressed. This place needs a mop and a miracle, she muttered, wrinkling her nose. A passing bat flapped past her, its wings ragged and its spirit broken. And maybe a very strong air freshener. She had arrived in Gotham only an hour ago, but already the place was tugging at her soul, people crying for help, suppressed screams behind broken windows, and the cold, bitter scent of injustice lingering in every corner. Honestly, why doesn't anyone clean these rooftops? She said, brushing away pigeon feathers and a particularly rebellious piece of newspaper that had stuck to her leg. Still, she had chosen this place on purpose. There had been options: glamorous New York, scenic San Francisco, or even the bizarrely polite town of Smallville. But no. She clicked on a Gotham subreddit once, seen 5 mugging posts in a row, and decided, rather stubbornly, that this city needed someone to protect it properly. Metropolis has Superman and now Boruto, which means it definitely doesn't need me. She sighed, watching the distant city lights of Metropolis flicker on the horizon. The idea of her older brother flinging himself at Superman like a particularly reckless lightning bolt was not a theory. It was a certainty. He's probably shouting something like, "I'm going to be the best hero of this generation," while throwing raisin gans around like candy, she muttered, deadpan. Father should beat him up. No, that wouldn't make a difference. But Superman? She clapped her hands together in silent prayer. I'm rooting for you, alien man. Please knock some sense into my brother. With that heartfelt wish floating toward the heavens, Himawari turned her attention back to Gotham. To say Gotham had problems would be like saying the ocean was damp. It wasn't a city so much as a patchwork quilt of police reports, bad lighting, and suspicious clowns. And it left Himawari Uzumaki positively speechless. She sat cross-legged on a fire escape, a large white bough resting in her lap like a sleeping animal. Her Byakugan was still active, but at this point it was just showing her crimes stacked atop crimes like pancakes on a particularly cursed breakfast table. How is this city even operating? She whispered, jaw dangling in sheer disbelief. Down below, a man was getting mugged by a woman dressed as a Victorian maid. 2 alleys over, someone was being chased by a man in a crocodile mask. A block further, a kid was trying to steal a donut from a crime boss and somehow winning. And the most baffling part? Most of the people down there weren't even shinobi. Just regular people. No chakra, no bloodlines, no superhuman anything. They were just fighting for their lives with umbrellas, baseball bats, or very loud screaming. This isn't even a ninja village. It's just chaos. Organized chaos with bad fashion sense. With a deep sigh, Himawari sat down on a rooftop ledge and cradled the elegant white bough in her arms. It shimmered faintly in the gloom, giving off an ethereal glow that made it look more like a divine relic than a tool of violence. And in truth, that's exactly what it was. AI, the spirit of the bough, rested quietly inside, her presence warm and gently pulsing like a sleeping heart. You're too dangerous for this place, Himawari murmured to the weapon. 1 arrow and we might accidentally erase Gotham. Not that anyone would notice. She giggled softly to herself, and AI stirred, a whisper of white flame curling around the gemset handle like a yawn. This bough, her reward, had been given to her by her father the night before. While her brothers were off being boys, read, shouting, training, occasionally setting things on fire, Naruto had quietly led her into a hidden armory beneath their new house. It had smelled of old parchment and sandalwood, the walls lined with weaponry so ancient and intimidating that even Himawari had felt her hair stand on end. But the moment she laid eyes on it, the weapon had responded. Naruto had explained it with his usual nonchalance. She picked you. Must be your calm heart and terrifying potential. Her name's AI, she used to be a phoenix. Don't use the soul arrow unless something really nasty shows up. Like, alien invasion nasty. To which Himawari, who still hadn't fully processed the words Phoenix Soul Weapon, had nodded like a perfectly well-behaved child, while internally screaming. What do you mean Soul Arrow could erase the moon? Even now, she still wasn't sure how she was supposed to casually carry around something that powerful. But then again her father was Naruto Uzumaki. His love language was overkill wrapped in a hug. He really does love me, she said softly, brushing her fingers across the smooth crystal limbs. I knew that already, but this is next level. She smiled, warm, bright, and utterly out of place in a city this miserable. Himawari Uzumaki had faced many strange things in her life. She had, for example, survived growing up in a household where ramen was considered a sacred experience. She had mastered the gentle fist by the age of 10 and stopped her father from accidentally blowing up the kitchen at least 6 times. But even she wasn't quite ready for a tiny blonde girl named AI to appear inside her mind and start bossing her around. Hima, Master Naruto left locks on my body. You'll have to challenge the trials before unlocking one of the locks, the voice chirped, sweet and dangerously smug. So you don't have to worry about accidentally destroying the planet, Disa Eni. Himawari blinked. Wait. The planet? She had been aiming an arrow at a drug deal happening near the docks, a simple, silent shot meant to disarm the weapon smugglers without any fuss. But now her grip loosened as she tried to process what AI had just casually revealed. Meanwhile, the bow shimmered faintly in her hand. And in her mind's eye, AI took shape, a small girl of about 10, with sunny twintails and a yellow yukata, complete with bunny slippers and the smug self-assurance of a creature that knew it was extremely dangerous. That makes sense, Hima mumbled, distracted. So which level am I standing at? AI spun in a circle and clasped her hands behind her back. First level. There are 10. Each one has a unique trial your father designed, nothing you can just bulldoze through with power. Every opponent you'll face inside is equal to you in strength and skill. Himawari's jaw dropped a little. So I can't brute force it? Nope. AI sang, cheerfully cruel. You'll have to think. Strategize. Use charm. Or, cry a little. That works sometimes. The Bao spirit floated up and grinned. Each level unlocks a new skill. The 100% accuracy and power stuff? That's basic. Wait until you get to the good part. I was made for you, Himawari. I'm your lifelong partner. Hima flushed at the warmth in AI's voice. Really? Yup. You're stuck with me forever, so you better start appreciating my genius. Himawari giggled. Okay. So what can you actually do? AI winked. Can't tell you yet. You have to earn it. She spun in a puff of flame and perched atop a glowing sign in Hima's mind. But I can give you access to the second-level ability right now. You've got a 60% chance of passing the trial, which is good enough for me. A shimmer ran down the bow like starlight on water. Hima's eyes widened as the word Seeker Shot glowed gently on the handle. Seeker Shot? She read aloud. Just think of your target, fire the arrow, and voila, across the planet, it'll find them. Walls, oceans, invisibility doesn't matter. If they exist and you've seen them once, the arrow will find them. Himawari's lips stretched into a gleeful grin. You're the best AI. I know I am. I'm the best bow in the world. There was a short pause. AI, my mother also has a bow. Silence. Complete, ominous silence in her mind. AI turned very slowly, her smile fixed but twitching at the corners. You will take the next trial tonight. Hima gulped. I didn't mean anything by it. Second best isn't so bad, right? AI, now curled up in a tiny sulking ball, didn't reply. Oh no, Hima sighed and pinched the bridge of her nose. Why is parenting so hard? And she's not even real. She tried again. You're unique, AI. Mother's bow can't talk. Or fly. Or vaporize moons. Obviously, AI huffed. Hima mentally facepalmed. This was what her father meant when he said powerful tools came with their own personalities. Still, she couldn't help the affection blooming in her chest. AI might be proud, pouty, and unpredictable, but she was hers. All right, she said aloud, eyes narrowing on the smugglers below. Let's get to work, second-level style. If Gotham had ever known peace, it had long since forgotten the feeling. The city coughed and groaned beneath its weight of corruption, like an old dog too tired to bark. But today, something strange happened. Something magical. And her name was Himawari Uzumaki. Standing atop a silent skyscraper, with her hair tied in a tidy bun and eyes shining with unshakable clarity, Hima took a deep breath. It was quiet, not the still kind of quiet, but the one just before the storm. The kind of quiet that made shadows nervous. Well, on to the hunt. With that one soft-spoken phrase, the air itself shivered. Down in the dim alleyways and smoke-choked streets of Gotham, things began to change. In 1 second, a gang of armed men laughed over stolen jewels. In the next, they were crying on the pavement, each one clutching a leg that simply wasn't there anymore. There was no blood. No pain either. The arrow had healed them the instant it hit, just a perfectly clean severing at the thigh or shin, as if politely saying, no more running, thank you. They weren't dead. They weren't even maimed, really. But they would never forget. From above, Hima's bow, AI, gleamed like a star in her hand, the string humming with satisfaction. Arrows made of white flame disappeared into the sky, reappearing only for brief moments as they thudded gently into knees and ankles all across the city. Criminals screamed. Police radios crackled. One man fainted mid-theft and landed in a trash bin. You're being very efficient today, AI murmured, clearly impressed. I feel proud to be wielded by you. Thanks, Hima said quietly, her eyes focused, glowing pale blue. Now let's go deeper. With a flick of her fingers, more information came flooding into her head, not from any mystical source, but from a clone sitting several blocks away in a hidden internet cafe, surfing government databases and digital news archives like a caffeinated raccoon. Corrupt mayors. Polluting companies. Business tycoons laundering money through Gotham's decaying systems. We're not vigilantes, she whispered. We're auditors with arrows. She raised her bow to the sky. Seeker shot. The sky bloomed with hundreds of arrows, each gleaming like comet trails, zipping away toward skyscrapers and penthouses, toward marble offices with golden faucets and poisonous policies. Some would hit knees. Some would disable cars. Some would simply sting, enough to leave a mark but not enough to justify calling it violence. Let them panic. Let them question. Let them finally see the people they hurt. And then, after the chaos, came the beauty. Hema reached into her pouch and drew out a shimmering green gem, no larger than a plum. It pulsed in her hand like a heartbeat. This one's for everyone. She drew an arrow from the gem, its body crackling with contained nature energy. Taking a deep breath, she aimed at the clouds above. And fired. A moment later, the arrow burst in the atmosphere like a silent firework, no noise, just light. Green light. Healing light. It fanned outward in every direction, blanketing the sky with a soft emerald glow that made even the moon peek curiously from behind a curtain of gloom. And then the smog cleared. Not a little. Not a patch. All of it. The sky over Gotham turned clear for the first time in what felt like a century. Street lights flickered. People stared from windows and rooftops, mouths open. Babies stopped crying. Old men stood still in parks and felt, for the first time in years, that they could breathe without coughing. "You're showing off," AI teased. Hema smiled, not denying it. "I'm my father's daughter," she said, eyes soft. "But I want to be better." And far below, Gotham blinked in the sudden clarity of a world it had never seen before. Flash. The wind sang sweetly as it whipped past Barry Allen's ears, the world nothing more than streaks of color and flickers of shape. To most, it was a Tuesday. To Barry, it was a fast Tuesday. Zooming across the highways and fields of America at speeds that made jet pilots feel insecure, the Flash was enjoying one of his usual patrols. No villains. No time paradoxes. Just him, the road, and the occasional enthusiastic pigeon that unfortunately got a bit too close to the Speed Force. "Okay, pigeon down," Barry muttered. "Sorry, little guy, fly safer." That's when it happened. A glint of light. A shimmer of pressure. And FWSHHHHH. An arrow. A flying arrow. Beside him. "Okay, that's new," Barry said aloud, squinting sideways as the thing zipped through the air like a tiny comet on a mission. Arrows didn't move like that. Arrows didn't keep up with him. Arrows didn't glow like that unless magic was involved, and Barry had seen enough magical nonsense lately to write a thesis. Green Arrow finally get enchanted gear? Please don't tell me he teamed up with Zatanna again. The arrow gracefully banked left. Barry, being Barry, decided logic was for turtles and turned with it. A few seconds later, the mystery arrow found its mark, a man in a ski mask with a rocket launcher casually walking toward a courthouse. What the heck? Barry slowed just in time to see the arrow phase through the man's arm like a ghost and pop. No more arm. The man screamed, stumbled, and hit the ground like a sack of half-frozen waffles. The rocket launcher? Safely tipped over into a patch of tulips. Barry blinked. Okay, wow. That had to hurt. He zipped around the spot in circles, examining the man. The injury was clean, like a laser scalpel had taken a holiday through the criminal's biceps. No blood. No burn marks. That's just rude-level precision. Then the arrow disappeared into the wind again like it had an appointment elsewhere. Barry stared after it, baffled. What in the multiverse is going on? Is this Cupid 2.0? Magic Sniper? Cupid's angry little sister? He considered chasing it. For exactly 0.3 seconds. Nope. Not my circus today. With a little salute to the unconscious crook, Barry turned on his heel and